LoveLore Library. Chapter 963. It was just that Shen Miao, as the princess of Prince Rui's residence, still had to meet her. In the main hall of the prince's residence, Yi Furen was talking to Yi Ku and Yi Mei was sitting at the side with a slight smile. Yi Maozai's head was slightly raised as if he was saying something, and the person sitting in front of him was Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing was wearing a silver-purple robe, and most likely because his injuries were not completely healed, he was sitting lazily and casually. Listening to Yi Maozai's words with a smile that was not a smile, one could not clearly see what it meant. When Shen Miao came in, the first person to see her was Yi Mei, and Yi Mei quickly stood up to greet her. However, Yi Ku did not move. Now that they were the children of the Yi family, their status had risen, and naturally there was no need to greet the princess of the prince like in the past. It was just that Yi Mei wanted to greet, but Shen Miao did not even help and just accepted it. A trace of unhappiness flashed in Yi Furen's eyes, but Yi Ku did not show it. Yi Maokai swept a glance at Shen Miao and saw everything. Shen Miao walked to the other side and sat on the main seat beside Xie Jingxing. Yi Maokai got up and said, "These days in the prince's residence, Mei and Ku have troubled us. Thanks to the princess' care, one is very grateful." Shen Miao smiled gently. "One cannot bear the word troubled. Speaking of which, Yi young lady and gentleman Yi are His Highness's benefactors. It is somewhat excessive to say troubled." Yi Maokai laughed and said a few words to smooth things over, but heard Shen Miao's words change and asked doubtfully, "But how did Li young lady and gentleman Li become Yi young lady and gentleman Yi? It is somewhat surprising that the relatives that the two of them are looking for are the Yi family." When she spoke like this, Xie Jingxing only played with the teacup in his hands and did not stop nor comply, as if he was watching from the sidelines. Yi Maokai was somewhat unsure of Xie Jingxing's meaning and hesitated for a while before smiling. "It is shameful to speak of it, but it was something that happened more than 10 years ago. At that time when my lowly wife was giving birth, the midwife in the residence was disloyal and received orders from a traitor to change my son from a dragon to a phoenix. They were actually a pair of brother and sister, but they had been replaced by a baby girl who had died young. In the past few years, with the thought of not washing their dirty linen in public, they had never made it public and had only investigated in secret. This time, the two of them entered Long Yi and accidentally came to the prince's mansion. Later on, they said they were looking for their relatives, so they met. Yi Maokai was born with a fair complexion and no facial hair. Looking at the amiable scholar, his words were even more sincere, as if he had taken out 120% of his sincerity. He looked at Shen Miao and laughed. "It is said that Mayor and Kuer saved His Highness the Prince of First Rank's life, but in fact our Yi family should be the one thanking His Highness. If it was not for this freak combination of factors, our family would not be able to reunite." "Exactly." Madame Yi laughed as well. Ever since Shen Miao met Madame Yi, this was the first time she saw Madame Yi laughing so happily. It was as if she was genuinely happy. No one would suspect that Yi Mei and Yi Ku were her long-lost children. But Shen Miao could not do it no matter what. In her previous life, she was a daughter of an official's daughter in Ming Qi, but in this lifetime, she became a great Liang person. One feared that the entanglement of this was not that simple. Yi Mei and Yi Ku sat at one side. Yi Mei was beautiful and Yi Ku was astute. With one look, one could tell that they were rare talents. LoveLore Library. What was even rarer was that they kept their propriety and did not speak rudely or use their identity as Xie Jingxing's savior to do anything. Because of that, others could not have any ill feelings towards them. That's right. Fu Xiaoyi was an astute and almost cold person. He was so selfish that he did not even hesitate to lay his hands on his own children, but he only doted on Mei Furen. It could be seen that she had her own uniqueness. Chapter 964. That is really a coincidence. Shen Miao smiled gently and casually said, Qin province is not far from Longyi. The Yi family had searched for more than 10 years and could not find it, but this time they found it upon entering the residence of the prince of first rank. She looked at Yi Mei. It is really fate. Is it not, young lady Yi? Yi Mei smiled, of course. The residence of the prince of first rank is a blessed land. She did not seem to hear the meaning behind Shen Miao's words and instead readily agreed. Shen Miao shifted her gaze and looked at Yi Maokai. Today Yi Darren came over. Yi Maokai quickly said, I am here to bring them back to the residence. Finishing, he blushed, as the biological father, it is our fault to let the siblings wander outside for so many years. Now that the family is finally reunited, naturally one cannot let them live in the wilderness. Today they will be brought back to the residence and be placed on the jade plates tomorrow. From now on, they are the descendants of my Yi family. When he finished, there was some excitement in his expression. Looking at Yi Mei and Yi Ku again, there were faint tears in their eyes. Shen Miao however felt that this play was lame and tasteless. Yi Maokai complimented Xie Jingxing a few more times, but it was because of Yi Ku and Yi Mei that he wanted to build a friendship. This attitude was somewhat subtle. The imperial family of the Great Liang had the intention to rope in the Yi family to deal with the Lu family, and the Yi family's position was crucial, thus they had always been neutral and did not express their stance. Logically speaking, if Yi Mei and Yi brother returned to the Yi family, the Yi family would have more confidence to contend with the Lu family, and naturally there was no need to compromise and submit to the imperial power. Now this attitude revealed that they wanted to stand on the side of Emperor Yonglu. After all, the relationship between the residents of Prince Rui and Emperor Yonglu was very close, and by pleasing the residents of Prince Rui, it was tantamount to expressing loyalty to Emperor Yonglu. Shen Miao's heart gradually sank. This was naturally not what she was happy to see. Once the Yi family really stood on the side of Emperor Yonglu, if she were to bring down the Yi family from behind, it would be cutting off Emperor Yongli's support. Not to mention Emperor Yonglu, even Xie Jingxing would not be willing. But if she were to form an alliance with the murderer who killed her children, she would not be able to escape the word disgusting in this lifetime. However, Xie Jingxing's attitude was thought-provoking. He listened to Yi Maocai's words carelessly and answered in an indifferent manner, perfectly avoiding questions that required him to express his attitude. He was neither up nor down, neither clear nor clear, fooling Yi Maocai around in circles. Yi Maokai and Madame Yi stood together and talked for a long time. It seemed like they had told Xie Jingxing everything. Thinking back, it seemed like Xie Jingxing did not reveal anything. When the Yi family expressed goodwill to the imperial family, even if the imperial family did not immediately shed tears of gratitude, they still had to reciprocate. But looking at Xie Jingxing's attitude, it was as if he was watching a show, lazy and not paying attention. It even made people doubt if he understood the hint in Yi Maocai's words. Yi Maokai and his wife were somewhat anxious and exchanged glances with Xie Jingxing. Everyone said that this Prince Rui of the Great Liang was slippery but very thorny and watertight. Today, when they got so close to him and left the court, it still made one unable to fathom him. This kind of attitude made Yi Maokai and his wife unable to get angry and also had no reason to be at ease. They originally wanted to put on airs, but in the end, they did not know who did it and Xie Jingxing gained the upper hand. Unknowingly, they were led by the nose by Xie Jingxing. Shen Miao was also somewhat surprised by Xie Jingxing's attitude. Thinking about it, the Yi family's sudden goodwill was already fishy and Xie Jingxing was not a brainless person, so naturally he had to investigate it clearly. But this made her heave a sigh of relief. As long as Xie Jingxing did not clearly express goodwill towards the Yi family, or in other words, looked at the Yi siblings in a different light because they had saved their lives, her heart was much calmer. Chapter 965. In the end, no one was able to convince the other. It was the first time Yi Maokai met with such a neither soft nor hard nail like Xie Jingxing. Seeing that the sky was getting dark, Yi Maokai did not say anything. He did not see Xie Jingxing express a clear attitude and knew that today's trip was a waste and there was no point in staying any longer. But his family's intentions had been conveyed and he brought Yi Mei and Yi Ku to leave. Xie Jingxing instructed Uncle Tang to send them off. Just as he was about to leave the main hall, Madame Yi seemed to have thought of something. She turned around and asked, "Prince Hua's birthday is in a few days, right?" Shen Miao was surprised for a moment. She did not know about Xie Jingxing's birthday, so the one in Ming Qi was definitely not true. As for Great Liang's side, she had never heard Xie Jingxing talk about it. However, Madame Ye's eyes were sharp. She saw Shen Miao's slightly surprised expression and asked with a smile, "Why does it seem like Qin Wangfei doesn't know?" Yi Mei and Yi Ku also stopped and Yi Mei looked at Shen Miao with a subtle gaze. As a wife, she didn't know her husband's birthday, and it was an outsider who told her this. The relationship between husband and wife was strange. Xie Jingxing sat in the living room and drank his tea. It was as if he did not hear what Madame Yi said. Shen Miao smiled faintly and replied, "Does Madame Yi still remember Miss Yi and young Master Ye's birthdays?" This. Madame Yi was puzzled. Shen Miao did not give her a chance to speak and smiled. After missing more than 10 years, Yi Furen should first think of how to compensate young Lady Yi and Gentleman Ye's birthdays. The meaning behind her words was, take care of your own matters before worrying about other people. Do not be bored after eating your fill. Madame Ye's expression turned ugly after being mercilessly slapped in the face. Yi Maokai seemed to be a little embarrassed. Yi Mei pulled Yi Ku and bowed to Shen Miao before hurriedly bidding farewell. Looking at their departing figures, Shen Miao took a deep breath. Yi Mei and her brother had finally succeeded. Before she made her move, the Yi family had finally succeeded in sheltering them. From now on, if he wanted to suppress Yi Mei and Yi Ku, he would first have to deal with the Yi family. This was much harder than just assassinating a pair of siblings. Especially when it was mixed with the complicated interests of the imperial family of the Great Liang. Pulling one part would affect the whole body, and it would be even more difficult. It really made one feel indignant and unhappy. She thought and hesitated for a moment before turning back to look at Xie Jingxing, thinking about how she was angry yesterday. Because of the relationship between Wan Yu and Fu Ming, she vented her anger on him. Today he did not treat Li Mei and her brother specially, so he must be rational. Perhaps they should have a serious talk. These days, her performance was indeed a little too terrible. But just as she turned her head, she saw Xie Jingxing expressionlessly standing up and walking past her as if he was a stranger. Not a single word was spoken. Shen Miao's sentence of, "I have something to tell you," was stuck in her throat and could not be swallowed for a long time. When Gu Yu and Jing Zhe behind saw this, they looked at each other in dismay. Both of them knew that Shen Miao and Xie Jingxing were in a cold war these days, and if the master was not good, naturally the servants would not be happy. But just now Shen Miao obviously had the intention to reconcile, and Xie Jingxing was so cold, one feared that his young lady's heart was hurt. Jing Zhe and Gu Yu had followed Shen Miao for so many years, especially in the recent 2 years, they had a clear understanding of Shen Miao's temperament. Her self-esteem was extremely strong. With Xie Jingxing like this, even if Shen Miao had the intention to make peace, she would not take the initiative to do so. Jing Zhe said in a low voice, "This is bad. If this goes on," she had just married over, "how would she live in the future?" Gu Yu also muttered, "One must think of a way." When Shen Miao returned to the room, the more she thought about it, the more upset she felt. Xie Jingxing's attitude towards a stranger was really very vexing. She had been an empress in Ming Qi for many years, and other than Fu Ming and Wan Yu who wanted to curry favor with Fu Xiuyi, she had never given in to others. She had a strong temperament, else she would not have fought with Mei Furan for so many years. Chapter 966. With Xie Jingxing's current attitude, it made her thoughts of having a good talk with the other party fade. Both of them were inflexible, but Xie Jingxing usually disdained to fight with others and she herself hid it well, so when they tangled with each other, it was a tragic sight to behold. Just as she was thinking, someone knocked on the door and it was Ba Jiao who pushed the door open. Ba Jiao placed a plate of pastries on Shen Miao's table with a smile. This is the new pastries made in the small kitchen and was specially made according to Ming Qi's taste. Furan should try and see if it is to your taste. Because of the Cold War between Shen Miao and Xie Jingxing, the servants in the residence were also cautious. The people from the MOU army would naturally side with their own masters, just like Jing Zhe and Gu Yu would definitely stand on Shen Miao's side. Ba Jiao and Fennel had already left and one did not expect that Ba Jiao would come back at this time. One feared that the drunkard had ulterior motives. Shen Miao looked at him and said, "You have something to say to me." Ba Jiao smiled at once and scratched his head. "This servant is stupid and was seen through by Furan before I said anything." "Furan, this servant was found by Jing Zhe and Gu Yu to persuade you." Outside the door, Jing Zhe and Gu Yu's expressions suddenly became strange. This Ba Jiao said that she was stupid but she usually looked very smart. She said that she was smart, but now she was pouring beans out of a bamboo tube and bringing the two of them out. They really didn't know what to say. Shen Miao laughed in spite of herself. "What do you want to persuade me about?" They all said that Furan's temperament is very cold. After Master was injured for so many days, Furan ran out on her own without a trace and did not come to see Master. After Master woke up, he only came to see once. Everyone felt it was unfair for Master, so these days Furan has been cold to Furan. One hoped that Furan will not blame. Shen Miao shook her head. "What they said is the truth. But Furan's temperament is not cold." Ba Jiao smiled. "Furan just does not like to say it out. Otherwise she would not bring us to wander around the forest for an entire night and must find that expert to ask for herbs for Master." "But why didn't Madam tell Master about this?" Shen Miao said blandly. "The person who saved him was not me and at the end the medicinal herb was useless. It was a futile effort and did not have any effect, so it is not counted as merit. What is there to talk about? She also did a lot of things for Fu Xiu-yi in the inner palace. She reduced it to simplicity and helped Fu Xiu-yi win a good reputation in the world. In the end, she could not match the decree that Li Ku issued for Fu Xiu-yi. If he said it out loud, he would only be laughed at and pitied. It would be better not to say it at all." Octagon Anise frowned and said, "But those are your kind intentions." Shen Miao looked at her. "Feelings?" Octagon Anise nodded. "Regardless of whether you managed to save Master or not, even if the herb was useless in the end, your intentions were genuine. If you hide your intentions, how will Master know?" Madam wandered in the forest for a whole night, and when she insisted on moving forward, those were her kind intentions. In this servant's opinion, Madam's intentions are even more precious than those medicinal herbs. If Madam hides your intentions because the medicinal herbs are useless, wouldn't that be throwing away a watermelon and picking up a sesame seed? Shen Miao was startled. Octagon Anise said with a smile, "Madam, your intentions are more useful than the medicinal herbs and can cure Master's illness. Must the intentions be said out loud in order to be known?" Shen Miao looked down. "If there is a heart, how can one not understand?" Octagon Anise shook his head. "It may be so for others, but it is different for Master." "Oh. You also know that Master's life was not smooth sailing. The MOU army was built by Master and this servant has followed Master for a long time. Master usually faces schemes every day, but those are from outsiders and enemies, so there is nothing wrong with it. But as one of us, one would hope to be more frank." Octagon Anise looked at Shen Miao seriously. Madam, you are Master's wife and the person closest to Master. If you do not even explain your intentions, Master may be aware but he will not be sure. The more precious something is, the more demanding it is. Master values your intentions so he would be angered. He does not doubt you but himself. Chapter 967. He was not doubting you but doubting himself. Shen Miao suddenly jolted, as if a piece of ice in her heart had blossomed because of this simple sentence. From it, soil was born, a trickle of water was born and a long green field was born. Master would also doubt himself, doubt that he is not good, doubt that he is not as good as others and doubt that you are dissatisfied with him. When all these doubts are added together, it would become doubt of your intentions. Like this, do you still want to hide your intentions? Shen Miao's eyes slightly drooped and her heart started to rise and fall. Xie Jingxing was such a proud person that even in the midst of thousands of troops, he would still casually smile. He lived in the filthiest and most chaotic court strife and at such a young age he had to carry a heavy burden that did not belong to him. His relatives, brothers and friends, he was neither close nor distant and no one believed in his sincerity. This made him seem like a person who did not care about anything. However, it made people forget that he had the most straightforward sincerity and the naivety of a youth. Just like how he treated Su Mingfeng, Princess Rong Axian and even the Marquis of Linen. He was so proud that he refused to explain everything but was doing everything behind the scenes. This kind of person, in the past life or this life, would not mix together with Li Mei and Li Ku. She should not have doubted at all. Her distrust came from her lack of confidence in herself. Just like Xie Jingxing's suspicion towards her, it came from his suspicion towards himself. Shen Miao closed her eyes. Just like what Octagon Zhao said, when one was facing the most precious thing, they would always be extremely demanding. She was moved by Xie Jingxing. Thus she was afraid that Xie Jingxing and Mei Furen were involved and Xie Jingxing's concern for her made her become a thorn in the other side. She seemed to have done something wrong but fortunately there was still a chance to make up for it. Octagon Zhao saw the change in Shen Miao's expression and suddenly smiled, Furen hoped that you can coax Master well. These days Master's temperament is very cold and the Mou army would not be able to take it. Shen Miao shook her head and smiled, I know. But, Octagon Zhao hesitated for a moment before asking, Furen, do you have any grudges with the siblings of the Yi family? Shen Miao was surprised for a moment, why do you say that? Everyone in the prince's residence knew about her cold attitude towards the Yi siblings. Everyone had their own guesses but this was the first time they met. Everyone said that Shen Miao was jealous of Yi Mei's beauty. Although it was ridiculous, they could not find any other reason. Why would the octagonal Anise ask such a question? You are too cold to that pair of brother and sister. These days, Master had sent people to investigate the background of that pair of siblings, but it seemed that nothing was amiss. So, Madam. Shen Miao's heart moved. Firstly, it was unexpected that Xie Jingxing would secretly investigate the background of Yi Mei and her brother. Secondly, the background of this pair of siblings, even Xie Jingxing could not find anything wrong with it, so they were really innocent. They do have some grudges with me. Shen Miao said, but this matter is of great importance and will not be mentioned for the time being. The octagonal Anise thoughtfully nodded his head and looked at Shen Miao with a smile. It is good that Madam has thought it through. Furen must not hide your intentions. Right now Master is muddle-headed from anger and can't see it, but that day when we accompanied Furen to look for the strange Taoist, we all saw it clearly. Anyone with eyes can see Furen's intentions, so there's no need to hide it. He then winked at Shen Miao. Master's birthday is on the 3rd day of the next month. In previous years, there would be a banquet at the Bai Shao Lu in Longyi. This servant had secretly asked the housekeeper, and it is the same this year. If Madam wants to prepare a birthday gift, it is best to prepare it for Master in these few days. Before Shen Miao could speak, the octagonal Anis threw another sentence: Master is a person that is easy to coax. If it is not possible, Madam can personally make a bowl of longevity noodles and Master's anger will be appeased. Of course, the most important thing is not to hide your intentions. Master will be even happier. He ran away like a wisp of smoke. Shen Miao looked at the two doors that she had knocked open and was startled for a moment before laughing out loud. Her heart was much more relaxed than a few days ago. Since some things could not be avoided, then it was better to face them directly. For example, a blood feud that could not be severed. For example, unspeakable intentions. Chapter 968. The third day of the 7th month was Xie Jingxing's birthday. Everyone in Prince Rui's residence should be busy. It was said that although Xie Jingxing himself did not like it, Emperor Yonglu would hold a banquet for Xie Jingxing at the Azure Heaven restaurant every year. The more Emperor Yonglu valued Xie Jingxing, the more the courtiers respected Xie Jingxing. Of course, Xie Jingxing's performance in these 2 years was worth scrutinizing. The birthday banquet had always been a day to curry favor. Early in the morning, a steady stream of birthday gifts poured into the courtyard. Uncle Tang was busy recording these things in the book and even showed it to Shen Miao. Shen Miao was after all the Wang Fei of the residence of Prince Rui. Even though she was in a cold war with Xie Jingxing these days, she still had to look over the accounts. Shen Miao glanced at it and saw a dazzling array of names. No matter if it was a high-ranking official or a low-ranking official, all of them rushed over to curry favor. The Lu and Yi families also sent over congratulatory gifts. Shen Miao sighed in her heart. It was only because Emperor Yonglu and Xie Jingxing had a close relationship that if it was in Mingqi, any official who held a birthday banquet with so many people coming over to congratulate, in the eyes of the emperor, that person would be the first to be suspicious. In the end, when it came to Long Yi, he did it with great fanfare, which made people feel a little surprised. Uncle Tang pointed out to Shen Miao which gifts should be placed in the storeroom and which gifts could be used directly. At the same time he asked Shen Miao, "Today Furen must not forget to dress up early." Tai Yi's side will send someone to fetch Furen to buy Xiao Lu. Shen Miao was puzzled. Me. Uncle Tang smiled and said, "Madam is our Wang Fei and His Highness's wife. Madam naturally has to attend His Highness's birthday." After hesitating for a moment, he stuttered, "When a husband and wife quarrel, they quarrel at the head of the bed and reconcile at the end of the bed. His Highness looks angry, but if Madam doesn't go over today, I don't know how long she'll be sulking with me, so, understood. I will go over," Shen Miao said. Uncle Tang then heaved a sigh of relief and exhorted Shen Miao with a few words before leaving. After leaving, Shen Miao finished looking at the account books and packed them up before preparing to return to the room. Jing Zhi came up with a thick face and carefully asked Shen Miao, "Furen will definitely go to buy Xiao Lu tonight, right? Prince Rui's residence is being stared at by others. Now that I have just arrived at the Great Liang, there will surely be people watching the show. If I don't go, it will instead give people the chance to gossip. It is better to go directly and deal with whatever comes. Isn't it better?" Jing Zhi nodded her head repeatedly. "That's right. They want to see what our Ming Qi's Wang Fei looks like, so let them see it clearly. A foreign that came out of the general residence, how can anyone casually become a Wang Fei?" Guyu pulled Jing Zhi and glared at her before whispering, "The more you speak, the more exaggerated it is." Jing Zhi's lips twitched, and seeing that Shen Miao had already walked into the room, she whispered to Guyu's ears, "Furen is still feeling awkward and finds so many reasons. If one wants to give in to son-in-law, then just say it first, no one would laugh at it." He then sighed with emotion. Furen is finally willing to admit defeat. Son-in-law is truly capable. Guyu said, speak less of it. When Shen Miao returned to the room, Jingzhi and Guyu also followed in. Guyu asked, does Furen want to pick what to wear tonight? This servant also wants to think about what kind of hair to comb. Shen Miao said, those will be done later. Help me grind the ink. Jingzhi and Guyu looked at each other in dismay. Both of them did not know why Shen Miao was interested in writing at this moment. Speaking of which, Shen Miao was not a person who loved to write and draw, but they would naturally follow their mistress' intention. Shen Miao spread out the letter and Guyu and Jingzhi then understood that it was to write a letter. Chapter 969. Shen Miao asked Guyu, older Biao's sister should be back soon. Guyu said, Gentleman Gao had sent someone to pass the message and would definitely be able to make it in time for Bai Xiaolu's birthday celebration tonight. Luo Tan and Gao Yang had disappeared for the past few days. Luo Tan had a fiery temper, and Gao Yang had lied to her before. It would take a while for Luo Tan to calm down, so Gao Yang simply abducted her. Shen Miao was also relieved as she knew that Gao Yang's character would not do anything bad to Luo Tan, and on the contrary Gao Yang was much more dangerous. Today was Xie Jingxing's birthday, and as Xie Jingxing's left and right arm and also Xie Jingxing's friend, naturally he would rush over. Shen Miao pondered for a moment before picking up the brush to write a letter. She was somewhat hesitant in writing, and after writing 2 or 3 sentences, she seemed to feel that it was not good and quickly crumpled the letter into a ball before throwing it into the wastepaper basket. She started to write again, and after writing for a while, she threw it away like before. At the end, one did not know how many pieces of paper were wasted before she kept the brush. After putting the letter into an envelope, she handed it over to Jingzhi. Later when you see Tai Yi, pass this to him and let him pass it to Xie Jingxing during the birthday banquet. Jingzhi's eyes widened as she did not think that it was for Xie Jingxing. She thought that Shen Miao was writing a letter to Shen Xian and wife, and was feeling strange that the letter was already written 2 days ago, so why was it being written again? Shen Miao said, Guyu, go out for me. She then casually pulled a piece of paper and wrote a few strokes before handing it to Guyu. Help me buy these few things. Guyu quickly said yes. Both of them left in a hurry. Shen Miao sat in the room but gave a sigh of relief. She rarely gave in to someone. Especially in this lifetime, the pride in her bones did not allow her to lower her head to others, but this time it was considered that she was in the wrong. Moreover, Xie Jingxing was also a proud person, and between the two of them, one must lower their head first. Shen Miao thought that since Xie Jingxing did not know anything, there was no need for him to lower his head. After receiving so many congratulatory gifts at the birthday banquet, she had to show something. However, Prince Rui's residence was not lacking in gold, silver, and jewels. Her handmade needlework was not considered exquisite. After thinking about it, there were only some simple things. Hopefully, what Octagonal Anise said was true. Xie Jingxing looked picky on the surface but was actually easy to coax. However, what she was most concerned about was that among the guests of the Azure Heaven restaurant, the Yi family had come, so the Yi siblings were also one of them. Whenever the Yi siblings were present, she would always follow closely behind to prevent the two from playing any tricks. It was even more impossible to allow Xie Jingxing to have any interaction with the two when she was not present. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, it was already evening. The people that Tai Yi sent had already started to come over to pick them up. Jingzhi inserted the last hairpin for Shen Miao and smiled, "It is done. Furen will definitely be able to beat everyone today. I'm not a contestant. What's the use?" Shen Miao laughed in spite of herself and looked at the mirror. She then pulled out that pearl hairpin and replaced it with a purplish-red jade begonia. Jingzhe blinked her eyes. This match is better than that hairpin just now. The image of the first time Xie Jingxing gave her this jade begonia floated in front of Shen Miao's eyes. At that time they were suspicious and wary of each other and were full of suspicion towards each other. At that time Shen Miao was still not clear of Xie Jingxing's background and only felt that he was not the same as the mischievous youth in the rumors of her previous lifetime. Most likely there were too many coincidences and inconceivable wonderful things in life. Now she and Xie Jingxing were husband and wife and came to the Great Liang together. This was something that she would not have thought of at that time. Wearing this jade begonia, perhaps Xie Jingxing's anger would be appeased. It would also make him think that since they had come this step from strangers to husband and wife, there was no need for any other unnecessary suspicions or jealousy. Chapter 970. Shen Miao stood up and there was a slight smile on her face. Ba Jiao and the rest are still waiting outside. Let's go. The few of them went out together and indeed saw that the horse carriage was already prepared at the door with Ba Jiao and Shi Xiang guarding outside. Jingzhe asked curiously, "Is His Highness not going with Furen?" Shi Xiang replied somewhat awkwardly, "His Highness had already gone first and let this subordinate come over to pick up Furen." This made others feel that something was wrong. The prince of first rank and Wang Fei did not go out together but one after the other. Anyone with discerning eyes could see that there must be something wrong with this. Jingzhe and Gu Yu were somewhat indignant for Shen Miao, but Shen Miao said lightly, "All right, let's set off." She knew what kind of character Xie Jingxing had. He was a proud person deep in his bones, but sometimes he was as stubborn as a naughty child. She would not fuss over these matters, but when she thought of her apology tonight, she felt a sense of unease. Bai Xiaolu was the largest and most expensive restaurant in Longyi. Not to mention the common people, even those high-ranking officials would have a lot of face if they wanted to hold a banquet here. Thus to hold a birthday banquet here, it was not just one or two tables but almost the entire restaurant. That was considered to be boundless. The more glorious it was, the more expensive it was. The residents of Prince Rui had held banquets here every year for the past 3 years, which was enough to see that the residence was overflowing with wealth. On the main seat, a young man was sitting diagonally as he carelessly listened to everyone's compliments. The purple gold robe almost covered the entire seat. Looking from afar, it was like the flowing night sky, with a kind of gorgeous charm. There were many people toasting and one would naturally be slightly tipsy. However, that pair of peach blossom eyes seemed to be smiling yet not smiling, as if he was slightly drunk but was incomparably clear, making one unable to tell if he was drunk or sober. There were also females among the guests and when they looked at that young man, they could not help but cast gazes of admiration. This Prince Rui was young and was incomparably handsome. He was full of elegance but had a bit of evil charm, which was the type that females were most infatuated with. In addition to his noble status and wealth, he was the type that one would want to rush to his side no matter what. It was a pity that he had already married a wife at such a young age, and she was even a legitimate princess. But, although there was a princess, the position of concubine was still empty. Even if she could not become a side consort, becoming a concubine was something that everyone would fight over. Lu Wan'er sat beside Lu Furen and her gaze involuntarily went to Xie Jingxing's side. 2 years ago when she saw Xie Jingxing for the first time, she had already fallen in love with him. At this time, all the males were vulgar and only this person could make her fall in love with him. Unfortunately, the position that she should have stood beside him was occupied by that stupid woman, Shen Miao. Thinking of this, Lu Wan'er was unable to restrain her anger and wished that she could tear Shen Miao into pieces. She had the intention to go over and say a few words to Xie Jingxing, but right now there were those officials who were fawning over Xie Jingxing. She was after all an official's young lady, and even if she was more daring, it was impossible for her to fawn over him in front of so many people. He couldn't help but feel a little depressed. In the blink of an eye, she saw Yi Mei talking to Yi Ku, and Lu Wanner's face darkened. As a female, one would always be the most sensitive to the appearance of other females. Lu Wanner thought that she was pampered and spoiled, eating and wearing the best clothes, so when she looked at the females beside her, she would always look down on them. In the entire Long Yi, she thought that she was not much different from a princess and did not even put the Yi family, which was as famous as the Lu family, in her eyes. This was because the Yi family did not have many descendants and did not have any young ladies. But now she heard that the Yi family had recognized a son and a daughter who were wandering outside. Originally Lu Wanner had the mentality of watching a show and wanted to take a look, but after seeing what Yi Mei looked like, she was not happy at all. Chapter 971. Yi Mei was too beautiful. Not to mention her beauty, she also had a special charm that attracted people to look at her all the time. It could be said that she was charming, but it was more naive than charming. It could be said that she was naive, but there was a mature charm to her. Most importantly, Yi Mei was very smart. For example, the two of them had just acknowledged their ancestors and met many madams for the first time. However, they were already able to chat happily with those madams. A beautiful, intelligent woman who knew when to advance and retreat was now crowned with the title of the Yi family's daughter. Seeing how Madame Yi doted on her even though she felt guilty, Lu Wanner felt that she was in a much better position than Madame Yi in terms of status and influence. This made Lu Wanner feel a strong sense of crisis. She heard that this Yi Mei saved Prince Rui's life, so she naturally had a closer relationship with Prince Rui's residents. Lu Wanner gritted her teeth in hatred. All along, Lu Wanner saw Xie Jingxing as her. Even with Shen Miao, Lu Wanner had never given up on this idea. A foreign official's daughter with no relatives or connections in Long Yi, with the Lu family's ability, it would not be difficult to find an opportunity to make her disappear in the future. Thus, Lu Wanner had never put Shen Miao in her eyes. However, Yi Mei was different. One must know that the relationship between the Yi family and the Lu family had always been subtle. They could not be considered friends, but they were not enemies either. If the Yi family wanted to form a marriage alliance with Prince Rui's residents, Lu Wanner quivered and bit her lips tightly, not saying a word. While she was deep in thought, Madame Yi said in astonishment, "Speaking of which, I have never seen Princess Yu before. Why didn't the princess come today?" All the madams started whispering to each other again. Actually, they weren't blind. Since Shen Miao wasn't here, they had already seen it. The only reason why they didn't mention it was because no one wanted to. Now that Madame Yi had brought it up, they naturally started discussing it. Madame Yi said again, "Could it be that she is sick? A few days ago, when I went to pick up Mei and Ku, I saw that the princess looked a little haggard. Come to think of it, the prince was sick." As his wife, she was naturally worried. It seems that her health was not good at that time and even the prince did not take care of her. His words caused an uproar. In Madame Ye's words, she secretly mentioned that she had been to the prince's residence before. The prince's residence and the Yi family had a close relationship because of the Yi siblings. He then ruthlessly belittled Shen Miao. When Prince Rui's life was hanging by a thread, Shen Miao did not even take care of him. Even if he was really sick, he was too heartless. On the other side, Xie Jingxing was drinking a cup of wine offered by his colleague. It was unknown if he had heard Madame Ye's words, but the corners of his mouth were curled up into a faint smile. He did not even look over. Someone said, "Could it be that the couple quarreled? How could this be?" Lu Furen smiled amiably. Didn't Qin Wang Fei personally say that Rui Qin Wang Fu would not accept any more people? It could be seen that the relationship between the two of them was very good. Otherwise, they wouldn't have said such words. Since their relationship was so good, they definitely wouldn't quarrel. Don't think too much about it. Until now, Lu Furen was still brooding over the words that Shen Miao said in front of Lu Wanner. The more she said it, the more Shen Miao slapped her own face. Saying it like that, wasn't it just separating from her husband? Thus, people should not be so arrogant. When Lu Wanner heard this, her mood from being disturbed by Yi Mei became slightly better. Even though she was not happy with Yi Mei, but if Shen Miao and Xie Jingxing were not good, she would be happy to see it happen. Yi Mei looked at Yi Furen slightly and said, "The prince's residence will not accept people." Chapter 972. Madame Yi shook her head and whispered, "Qin Wang Fei said it herself." Luo Tan really had a stomach full of anger when she heard it. She had rushed back in a travel-worn state and did not expect to not see Shen Miao. She did not know any of the madams and ladies here and could not rashly say anything to cause trouble for Shen Miao. Now that these people were going overboard, she could not bear it anymore. "Could it be that she is not coming?" a madam asked. Just as Luo Tan was about to refute, she heard a gentle and smiling voice from the door. "Sorry everyone, I am late." Everyone subconsciously looked towards the door. A young lady brushed aside the bead curtain and walked in with a smile. She was young and looked very delicate. Her eyebrows were like crescent moons and her eyes were like limpid autumn waters. Her lips were slightly hooked. She was wearing a purple sunset lily dress with dark patterns, a lilac-embroidered robe, a cloud bun and dark purple gourd earrings. She was not dressed extravagantly and could even be considered simple. However, it seemed that with her arrival, the luxurious long hall became brighter. The somewhat dignified purple not only did not go overboard, it contrasted with her snow-white skin and picturesque eyebrows. When she walked over step by step, the hem of her dress swayed and her beauty was compelling. That was a beauty that was completely different from Li Mei. Beauty was in the bones and not in the skin. Li Mei was beautiful, but this lady's beauty was like the spring stream, the summer thin ice, the autumn crescent moon and the winter snow. Beauty was in her bearing and expression. It was as if 1 point more was more and 1 point less was less. It made people unable to take their eyes off her, but at the same time, they felt a biting cold. They did not dare to daydream and could only look up. Shen Miao slightly raised her chin and walked to the seat below the main seat and sat in the middle of the female side. Her expression was graceful. This room full of madams and ladies, as well as high-ranking officials and nobles, paled in comparison to her. She took the wine that Luo Tan handed over and smiled, "Late, punish yourself with a cup." Elegantly drank it clean. Neither servile nor overbearing. Impartial. There was heroism but elegance. Among the people that came, there was Xie Jingxing following behind. Admittedly it was to curry favor, but Shen Miao's actions made others have a good impression and immediately raised their cups and smiled. "Wang Fei has a good bearing. Let us toast together." Luo Tan blinked her eyes and felt that Shen Miao was exceptionally good-looking today and her bearing was exceptionally different. No matter what, she was proud of it and felt that there was light on her face and she could not help but straighten her back. Shen Miao gently smiled and swept her eyes across everyone present, but she remembered that Jing Zhe and Gu Yu had been busy for most of the afternoon for her. She had to use the identity of Prince Rui's consort to get to know everyone in the Longyu royal court, and more importantly, Mei Furen was present. She did not allow herself to have any trace of defeat in front of Mei Furen. This was the dignity that she had brought along with her a pair of children. No matter how badly she lost in her previous life, this life would not be the same as her previous life. She would not give in even the slightest bit. Li Mei also looked at Shen Miao in a daze and there was surprise in her eyes. Shen Miao faintly smiled at her, but her heart was as cold as ice. This pair of brother and sister actually dared to appear in front of her so openly, over and over again. Did they really think that with the Yi family, they would have nothing to fear? Luo Tan pulled Shen Miao slightly and whispered in a voice that only the two of them could hear, "Biao, youngest sister, did you quarrel with brother-in-law? Why does it look like something is not right?" Shen Miao turned to look at Xie Jingxing. He was listening to a bureaucrat's toast in front of him and was listening indifferently. His eyes did not even look over at this side, it was really full of indifference. Shen Miao was slightly sad. She did not know if Tai Yi had given him that letter. If it was given to him, it would still be like this. Tonight. Shen Miao was also not sure if she could explain it. Chapter 973. Just as he was thinking, he heard an official say, "Since everyone is here, let us congratulate His Highness the Prince's birthday together." Everyone raised their cups and congratulated. Xie Jingxing's lips curled as he drank his cup. One of the madams said, "Speaking of which, Madam Yi has just found Miss Yi and young Master Yi. Miss Yi is so beautiful. She must be talented and has a good relationship with Prince Rui's residence. Why don't you accept Jing-er? Why don't you show your skills to His Highness the Prince?" These words were somewhat belittling. A young lady from a wealthy family performing in front of everyone. If it was not a proper competition, it would seem frivolous. What's more, Yi Mei was raised by a merchant's family. Who would know about her talents? This foreign was obviously here to nitpick. The Yi family had many political enemies in Long Yi. Yi Ke was unhappy and Yi Foreign was about to return the compliment when she heard Yi Mei say with a smile, "It is not impossible, but I am afraid of spoiling everyone's mood and dare not make a fool of myself." The foreign who made the suggestion could not wait for her to make a fool of herself and immediately laughed. "How can that be? Thinking about it, it should not be. Isn't that right, Your Highness the Prince?" Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows and swept a glance over. His lips curled up and he said with a smile that was not a smile, "Dance." His tone was somewhat casual, as if he was instructing a dancer to entertain others. Yi Mei's eyes flashed and she stood up. She first bowed to Shen Miao and said, "Since everyone is in such a good mood today, I do not know if I have broken the rules by coming to Long Yi. I am not very sensible, but I am willing to make a fool of myself to make everyone happy. After all, I am in the mood to play around." Her words were well behaved and seemed to be thinking for others. There was some naivety, but there was some charm and provocation. But Shen Miao saw the provocation in Yi Mei's eyes. "I have learned a type of water sleeve dance from my adoptive mother in Qinzhou. Today I will dance it for everyone to see," she said. Shen Miao lowered her head slightly and a sneer flashed across her lips. Yi Mei quickly changed her clothes and came out. She was born with a somewhat charming appearance, but she was wearing a snow-white long dress, and a wide belt wrapped around her waist, making her extremely slender. To think that she was dressed in filial piety, she was indeed complimented by this snow-white dress, which made her look even more beautiful and graceful. Rice paper, brush, and ink were placed on the 4 neatly arranged screens. The maidservant who played the zither was also present. When the first note began, Yi Mei shook her long sleeves and began to dance. Shen Miao's nails almost dug into her palms. The ink-wash dance was Yi Mei's best dance. Yi Mei was proficient in the 4 arts of zither, chess, calligraphy, painting, and painting. In the imperial harem, being the only pet naturally had its charm. The ink-water dance was just one of them. When dancing, the sleeves would be dipped in ink and painted on the xian paper. After the dance, the painting would be completed. It was elegant and unique. The beauty was beautiful and picturesque. But this water sleeve dance was the blood of Shen Miao's heart, a thorn in her eyes, and every time she saw it, the pain was unbearable. In the beginning, when the Xiongnu came to request for a marriage, Fu Xiuyi wanted to marry Wan Yu over. Shen Miao used both carrot and stick and even used the Shen family to threaten, but Fu Xiuyi's heart was like a boulder and was unmoved. Wan Yu thought for a long time and came up with an idea. She learned a song and personally played it for Fu Xiuyi. That song was something that Wan Yu searched for a long time and was changed by Shen Miao again and again. What Wan Yu wanted to say was all in the song. She only hoped that Fu Xiuyi would remember the father-daughter relationship and not be so ruthless in his actions, and give Wan Yu a way out and dispel this idea. But on that day, Shen Miao invited Fu Xiuyi to Kunning Palace and let Wan Yu play it for Fu Xiuyi. Just after she finished playing, she saw a trace of emotion in Fu Xiuyi's eyes and Mei Furen came uninvited. She smiled as if there was no one else present. "So your majesty is here." This official's concubine learned a new dance today and wanted to dance it for your majesty to watch. "Since her ladyship is also here, then let us watch it together." She danced charmingly and he watched with deep affection, but he completely forgot about Wan Yu and Shen Miao who were still waiting. Shen Miao would always remember the disappointment in Wan Yu's eyes. Just a young female of 10 years of age, the vitality in her eyes slowly faded and almost returned to calmness. On the second day, Wan Yu came to kowtow to her and said, "Empress mother, do not waste your thoughts for this son. This son is willing to have a marriage." How could anyone be willing to have a marriage? It was just that Wan Yu had seen Fu Xiuyi's ruthlessness and Mei Furen's methods earlier than her. Perhaps Wan Yu felt that even if she rushed to the future without knowing the future, it would be more comfortable than staying in the palace and being stabbed in the dark. Finally, Wan Yu was free. But Shen Miao would never be able to let it go. The snow-white long sleeves fluttered in front of her, but Shen Miao felt that the long sleeves were not stained with ink. Every drop was the blood of Wan Yu's heart. It was also a thorn in her eyes, a nail in her bones. Chapter 974. Li Mei's waist was soft and her movements were charming. Her pair of bright eyes seemed to be looking at someone else, but at the same time, it seemed like she wasn't looking at anyone else. She was like a butterfly, tickling people's hearts. Thinking that the butterfly was going to stay in his hand, he didn't guard against it, only to see the colorful butterfly flapping its wings and flying away. The female guests could not take their eyes off, not to mention the males. Men always liked good-looking things. His eyes were almost glued to Li Mei's body. Yi Furen and Yi Maokai also gradually revealed a proud expression. To be able to give birth to such a daughter with both looks and skills that made all the males in the Great Liang flock to her like ducks, that was also a kind of ability, and not everyone had this ability. Lu Wanner was filled with jealousy and hatred as she gritted her teeth in anger. Shen Miao, however, looked coldly at Li Mei, who was dancing, and her thoughts were drifting back to the previous lifetime. The first time she saw Mei Furen was when she returned to the Ding capital from the Qin country. She only heard that there was an additional imperial concubine in the palace, but everyone respectfully addressed her as Mei Furen, and did not mention the title of imperial concubine. This was somewhat unusual. Hearing that Fu Xiuyi doted on this Mei Furen, even though Shen Miao's heart was sour, she did not think much of it. Thinking that with Fu Xiuyi's cold temperament, no matter how much he doted on a person, it would not be too much. After that she went to the imperial study to look for Fu Xiuyi and wanted to talk to Fu Xiuyi about a serious matter, but saw Mei Furen throwing Fu Xiuyi's paperweight in the imperial study. On the day she returned to the palace, Mei Furen claimed that she was ill and did not come, so this was the first time she saw her. Shen Miao saw that that female was so beautiful that every frown and smile was like a painting, but she was arrogant and barbaric and actually threw a tantrum in the imperial study. Shen Miao thought that Fu Xiuyi would get angry, and Fu Xiuyi indeed showed an angry look, but that Mei Furen actually turned around and left. At that time Shen Miao thought that such a strong female actually dared to talk to Fu Xiaoyi like that. With this kind of temperament, how long could she live in the inner palace? At that time she was busy asking about Wan Yu and Fu Ming's situation and did not pay much attention. She only felt that that female was an extremely beautiful and extremely arrogant person. But even if Fu Xiaoyi was angered to this state, on the morning of the second day, Shen Miao saw Fu Xiaoyi accompanying Mei Furen for a stroll in the imperial garden, and his words were filled with pampering which made one stunned. She had never seen Fu Xiaoyi like this before, and Fu Xiaoyi was not a person with a good temper. Fu Xiaoyi's gentleness was only in front of his virtuous talents. Towards women, he had never been patient. But Mei Furen had angered him yesterday, and on the second day, she was able to make Fu Xiaoyi smile. It was at that time that Shen Miao suddenly realized that this woman was not only beautiful and arrogant, she was extremely dangerous because she could play with one's heart in the palm of her hands. No matter if it was towards a man or not, in short, she had successfully captured Fu Xiaoyi's heart. Sure enough, as the days of Shen Miao's return to the palace grew longer, she gradually discovered that this Mei Furen was somewhat scary. She looked arrogant and rude. She did not restrain her temper, but she just happened to maintain her rudeness at a safe level. Fu Xiaoyi only felt that her true temperament was hard to tame and became more and more fascinated. And when facing Shen Miao, Mei Furen was rude, ridiculing and tit for tat. Because of her relationship with Fu Xing, she had repeatedly provoked the relationship between Fu Ming and Fu Xiaoyi. Unfortunately, Fu Xiaoyi's heart had always been biased. What was the true face of Mei Furen? Shen Miao looked at the charming woman in front of her. In this life, she had become the daughter of the Yi family. She was cautious, clever, and knew when to advance and retreat. She no longer showed her arrogant side. But, was this really her true face? After dealing with Mei Furen for a lifetime, Shen Miao knew how terrifying she was. She was a sly female like a fox. Whatever she wanted, she would never fight for it directly. She would go around and around, with 9 twists and 18 turns, and at the end she would still show off her cleverness and even put the blame on the person that she harmed. Chapter 975. What was she trying to do with her actions today? Did she want Xie Jingxing to be like Fu Xiaoyi, fascinated by her at first sight and fall in love with her the second time? Shen Miao sneered in her heart but could not help but look towards Xie Jingxing's direction. With this look, she met with Xie Jingxing's gaze. Xie Jingxing's gaze was on Shen Miao, and most likely he did not expect that Shen Miao would suddenly look at him. He paused for a moment before turning his head away and continued to look outside as if nothing had happened, as if he was hiding something. But he did not see the person who was dancing enthusiastically in the middle. Shen Miao was surprised for a moment, and an indescribable feeling welled up in her heart. She had 120% hatred towards Mei Furen and naturally had a hidden sense of inferiority towards herself. In terms of appearance and style, she admitted that she was not as good as Mei Furen, thus the previous Fu Xiaoyi did not hesitate to sacrifice her. And Xie Jingxing was several thousands of times better than Fu Xiaoyi. If Li Mei also took a fancy to Xie Jingxing, Shen Miao thought that it would be a disaster. But Xie Jingxing's gaze was on her and did not look at Li Mei. How was this different from Fu Xiaoyi? If it was Fu Xiaoyi, as long as Shen Miao and Mei Furen appeared together, he would not even look at Shen Miao. People were indeed different from each other, just like how she and Li Mei were different. Xie Jingxing and Fu Xiaoyi were also different. As she was thinking like this, she did not even know when Li Mei had finished dancing. She only heard the warm applause in the hall and then raised her head. She saw Li Mei standing there with a slight smile. Her forehead had some beads of sweat and her cheeks were pink, making her even more moving and beautiful. And behind her, the ink painting was completed. There was a Qilin stepping on the clouds and it was a picture of a birthday wish. The painting was lifelike and it was done with great effort. Ye young lady is indeed talented and skilled. A Darren from the scholar residence said, the painting is lifelike and is a top-grade masterpiece. The young ladies in my scholar residence do not have this ability. The dance is also not bad. A Furin quickly followed, Ye Furin is really blessed. This Ye young lady is like you. Not only is she beautiful, she is also talented. Look at our Long Yi, he dances so well and paints so well. He's really one of the best. Madame Yi accepted it with a smile, but Lu Wanner twisted her handkerchief in jealousy. Her eyes were filled with unwillingness. Another person said, I wonder what your highness thinks of this painting. Everyone looked towards Xie Jingxing. Yi Mei also looked towards Xie Jingxing's side, but she saw Xie Jingxing holding a wine cup and looking out the window. She did not know what he was thinking as he was lost in thought and did not listen to the discussion at this end. Your Highness. Gao Yang reminded him. Xie Jingxing regained his senses and asked, what is it? Let me ask you, what do you think of Miss Ye's birthday painting? Gao Yang asked. Everyone was a little embarrassed. Yi Mei was doing her best to show off her talent and even drew a painting, but Prince Rui was simply distracted and didn't pay attention at all. This was undoubtedly too disrespectful to Yi Mei. When Xie Jingxing heard this, he swept a glance at the picture and slightly hooked his lips, not bad. His perfunctory attitude could be seen even from 3 floors away. Yi Mei's smile was a little stiff, but when Shen Miao saw it, a trace of a smile flashed in her eyes. For someone like Xie Jingxing, how could he be distracted in such an occasion? Such a focused person must have done it on purpose. Even though she did not know why he wanted to deliberately embarrass Yi Mei, Shen Miao was slightly happy because of his action. Yi Mei caught this hint of her smile. Yi Mei stared at her and suddenly laughed softly. Speaking of which, when I was living in Prince Rui's residence, I heard that Wang Fei was also talented. Chapter 976. Suddenly she changed the topic to Shen Miao. One only heard that Wang Fei's archery skills are excellent and never heard of anything else. Since today is Prince of First Rank's birthday, why not Wang Fei join in the fun and let us broaden our horizons? My daughter has admired Wang Fei for a long time. She said somewhat uncomfortably. Anyone who saw it would think that Yi Mei had heard of Shen Miao's rumors and worshipped her, wanting to witness it with her own eyes. But Shen Miao was a daughter of a military family. It was one thing to be good at archery, but no one had seen her dance before. If she did it, perhaps she would make a fool of herself, but if she did not respond, it would prove her reputation as a boorish person. Everyone looked at Shen Miao. Shen Miao gently smiled. I am the Wang Fei of Prince Rui's residence. How can I be like a courtesan, playing and singing and allowing others to watch? In an instant, the hall was silent, and Yi Mei's face turned red. Originally, singing and dancing in front of the ministers was a loss of face, but because Yi Mei was the daughter of the Yi family and was born beautiful and talented, everyone ignored this point. But for Shen Miao to say it out loud, it was very subtle. Yi Furin's and Yi Mao Kai's faces were ugly. Yi Furin wanted to speak, but once she opened her mouth, would it not be going along with Shen Miao's words and saying that Yi Mei was a courtesan? Lu Furin and Lu Wanner were somewhat rejoicing in others' misfortune. They were most happy to see Shen Miao and Yi Mei quarreling. Xie Jingxing looked at everything with a smile and did not seem to feel that there was anything wrong with these words. He did not intend to mediate and just watched with folded arms. Luo Tan felt that Shen Miao seemed to be targeting Yi Mei, but there was a vague pleasure in her heart. It was originally Xie Jingxing's birthday, but this Yi Mei danced here and overtook the host. Moreover, she took the initiative to ask Shen Miao to sing and dance, so why would she ask others to do the same? Ji Furen looked at Shen Miao and her heart was anxious. Xie Jingxing's birthday was a banquet for all the officials, and Shen Miao made the atmosphere so stiff that others would only blame the residents of Prince Rui for not following the rules and damaging the reputation of the entire residents of Prince Rui. They would also say that Shen Miao was jealous and haggled over every ounce with a daughter of the Yi family. Yi Mei hesitantly stood in the same place. She slightly frowned, which made people feel pity. A good beauty was forced into such a situation, which made people feel very unbearable. Some of the men in the hall felt that it was unfair, but they also thought that they were righteous. They wanted to be a hero to save the beauty and speak up for Yi Mei. Shen Miao swept her eyes across everyone in the hall and took in everyone's expression. Yi Mei had this kind of ability, she never needed to say what she wanted. She frowned and sighed, urging the people around her to sacrifice their lives for her. Today, she rejected Yi Mei. She was afraid that the entire Long Yi would stand on Yi Mei's side the next day. How could he let Yi Mei get what she wanted? She stood up and smiled under everyone's astonished gaze. However, Miss Ye's kindness is hard to refuse, so I'll reluctantly accept it. It just so happens that I learned a song a few days ago, so I'll play it for Miss Yi. How could it be played for Miss Yi? Madame Lu said with a smile, shouldn't it be to congratulate His Highness on his birthday? This song is very sad. Shen Miao said lightly, it does not seem like a celebratory tune and is not suitable to welcome one's birthday. It is just that I felt that it was good a few days ago, so I learned it. Since Miss Yi admires me, naturally good things should be shared with one, right? She looked at Yi Mei with a smile. Yi Mei also smiled softly, naturally. These two people exchanged words back and forth, as if there was an invisible knife and sword shadow. Yi Mei was charming and Shen Miao was dignified. Each had their own beauty, and for a moment one could not differentiate the primary and secondary. Shen Miao held up her sleeves and walked to the middle as Yi Mei withdrew. Jing Zhe quickly found a chair for Shen Miao. Shen Miao looked up and asked, bring the zither over. Chapter 977. Guyu only came out after a long time and said, Bai Xiaolu only has a Jiao Wei Qin, foreign. The Jiao Wei Qin had a special sound and Guyu was very clear that after following Shen Miao for so many years, when would she see Shen Miao play the qin? On one hand, she was secretly hating this young lady of the Yi family for not having good intentions and wanting Shen Miao to do such an elegant thing. At the same time, she was making things difficult for Shen Miao, hitting one's face at one's own to impress others. Especially in this foreign land, no one would be courteous to Shen Miao on account of the Shen family's face. Most of the people here had ulterior motives and could not wait to throw stones at someone who was down. Especially with Yi Mei's unique ink dance in front of her, Shen Miao would pale in comparison no matter what she did. No problem. Just take it. Shen Miao said. When the surrounding Furens and young ladies heard this, they started whispering. Didn't one say that one is naturally rough, to actually want to play the qin? Should be wanting to compete with the young lady of the Yi family. Really competitive. It is a pity for the residents of Prince Rui. One fear that they will lose face today. The people of Ming Qi are really not able to be seen in public. Do not even know how much weight they have. Their voices were very soft but they could not hide the ridicule in their eyes. Luo Tan was full of confidence. Even though she had not heard Shen Miao play the qin before, she inexplicably felt that Shen Miao was omnipotent. Since she could say it, she would definitely be able to do it. Ji Yushu however whispered to Gao Yang, sister-in-law will really know how to play the qin. In the beginning when the Feng Xian pawn shop investigated, there was not even a teacher who could play the qin for her. Self-taught. That is too powerful. Gao Yang shrugged his shoulders, I also do not know. Let's wait and see. Pei Lang was also one of the guests at the banquet. Guangwen Tang did not teach the zither, but Shen Miao did not choose to learn the zither. Pei Lang had heard the teachers there complain that Shen Miao could not even differentiate the zither strings. Now seeing Shen Miao gladly accepting it, it was hard to hide the surprise in his heart. He could not help but look at Xie Jingxing, thinking that Shen Miao was so competitive because of Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing slightly frowned, the hand that was holding the wine cup slightly tightened. Shen Miao burned incense and washed her hands before lightly saying, "This song is called Song of Blood." It was written by a young princess who was forced to go to the enemy country for a marriage alliance and was forced to condescend herself to marry the enemy country's leader who was over 50 years of age. She was uneasy about the future but was helpless and hoped to change her imperial father's mind. This song was composed by her heart filled with grief and despair. Her voice was light, like the vague moonlight, but after Mei Furen's passionate dance, it made one quickly calm down, as if with her words, one had entered the story. She plucked at the strings. The sound of the scorched-tail zither was thick and heavy. It was not as clear and melodious as ordinary zither sounds. It was hard to move one's heart when plucked, but she played it bit by bit, playing it for a long time. It was clearly an inexplicable zither sound, but it was heart-stirring. After the first sound of the plucking, the hall became quiet. She opened her mouth slowly and sang slowly. The vast Yangtze River flows from the west, the water's surface, the clouds' mountains, and the pavilions on the mountains. The mountains and rivers connect, the pavilions face each other, the arrangement of heaven and earth. Walking in the moon, walking in the stars, eating the autumn in the lonely home, worries on the pillow, worries on the horse, rest after death. Her voice was usually gentle and as clear as water, but at this moment there was a sense of pain, making one's eyes turn red and their hearts sour. Along with her singing, along with her zither sound, it was as if a young princess appeared in front of one's eyes. She was born cute but was forced to wear a phoenix coronet and a red robe, bitterly sitting in a corner of the palace. That palace was towering, serene and heavy. At the age of innocence, one had to welcome a not easy fate. Chapter 978. She boarded the carriage and bade farewell to her mother. The emperor was heartless. She sacrificed her daughter for the great cause and became a royal princess. However, she was faced with a marriage that she could not decide. It was a long journey away from the capital. She lifted the curtain in loneliness. She looked at the eagles flying by, the fish swimming in the water, the wind, the rain, and the clouds. Everything was freer than her. In the near distance, the moon and flowers fly in the blink of an eye. Holding the farewell cup in her hand, her eyes were filled with tears of parting. "I just told them to take care of themselves, but the people of the evil sect can't bear to let you go." Shen Miao's tears slowly flowed down. She was born delicate and dignified, with skin as white as jade. Under the light of the lamp, her bare hands were playing with tears. Her expression was clearly cold, but it seemed to be filled with endless suffering. Words could not be spoken, nor could words be sung. Her clear eyes were black and white, clear and limitless. However, it made her look even more like a flower in the rain, trembling and making people want to protect her. Her singing made everyone in the hall speechless. Their eyes reddened and their hearts felt stifled. They no longer had the joy they had when Li Mei was dancing. But suddenly the strings turned, the notes became rapid, and her words sharpened. Corrupt the country's monarch, treacherous officials monopolizing power, open the river to become the root cause of the disaster, the bureaucracy's laws are excessive, the criminal law is heavy, the people are resentful. Cannibalism. What about seeing? Thieves become officials, officials become thieves, fooling around with the wise. How pitiful. It would be better to see this building collapse with my own eyes, turning it into rubble. Rise and fall for 50 years, and look at the ruined monument with cold eyes. Her eyes were cold and fierce, and her voice was filled with tears of blood. It was as if she was weeping and complaining, as if she was talking about the past. Then, the killing intent in his eyes was concealed. His heart was filled with resentment, but he had yet to make up his mind. Strand by strand, they all flew towards the seated Yimei siblings. In the end, Wanyu did not play the entire song for Fu Xiu-yi to hear, and the rest of the song was completed by Shen Miao. In the cold palace, she took the broken zither and played it for him to hear. The first half was Wanyu's plea, and the second half was her accusation. In the night, there was no end to the noise, but those people could not hear it. Now, here you are, listen. Listen carefully. Does this tune sound even a little familiar? Was there a trace of fear? Xie Jingxing put down the cup and his gaze was as sharp as a blade. Yimei felt a little cold. What did the lyrics have to do with her? But why did it seem to be directed at her? Why did she feel uneasy in her heart? When the song was finished, the faint zither sound stopped and Shen Miao suddenly stopped and raised her eyes. The hall was silent for a long time. Who dared to say that Princess Rui was nameless and did not know how to play the zither or chess? Being able to play and sing to silence the entire hall was also a skill. But why did it make one's heart sink? It was as if they had heard a sad story. No matter how hard they tried, they could not be happy. Shen Miao opened her mouth warmly and said, "This song is not considered joyous and should not be played on a birthday, but since young Lady Yi wanted to hear it, one specially played it for young Lady Yi." She looked at Yimei. Is young Lady Yi satisfied? Everyone's gazes fell on Yimei. Yimei was restless. These words were as if she was forcing Shen Miao to play the qin to embarrass herself, but she had to admit that Shen Miao was not rough. Playing the zither was not difficult, but it was difficult to move people's hearts. Her zither had already moved everyone in the hall, and if one were to go against one's conscience and say that it was not good, it would be disadvantageous. Princess is indeed as rumored to have unparalleled talent. Yimei smiled. This song of blood is really admirable. But she was somewhat puzzled. Why is the first and second half of this song of blood so different? The second half of the song seems to have changed. The second half was intense, resentful and desperate, like the last cry of a trapped beast, making one tremble. Shen Miao moved her fingers. The front and the back were naturally different. The front was Wanyu's sorrowful words to move Fu Xiu-yi, but the back was her painful loss of her daughter, and after being banished to the cold palace, she complained about this pair of poisonous man and woman. Chapter 979. Shen Miao smiled. The first half was about the feelings of the little princess who was forced to marry off. The second half was about the despair and indignation of the birth mother of the little princess, the Empress, who lost her daughter. I see. Everyone was enlightened. Someone else asked, "This song is really touching. Where did the princess consort hear this story from? It really makes one sigh." It was just sung by a passing storyteller. Shen Miao smiled. I just felt that this story was too heavy, so I wrote it down. Oh. A young lady could not help but ask, since it is a story, what was the ending of the story? What was the ending of the princess who was married off? Shen Miao replied indifferently. The ending of the story was that the princess died on the way to the marriage and the empress was banished to the cold palace. Not long after, she was given a pair of white silk scarves and died. Everyone else sighed and said that this story was too tragic. Madame Yi was a little unhappy. Shen Miao's performance was actually incomparable to Yimei's. Yimei was charming, her dance was warm and moving, but Shen Miao only sat quietly and sang a few lines and attracted everyone's attention. Furthermore, she cleverly told a story and stole Yi Mei's limelight. This way, Yi Mei's ink-wash dance lost out. Everyone looked at Shen Miao with a slight change in expression. Women were always emotional. Shen Miao told such a pitiful story, and the sound of the guqin seemed to firmly grasp people's hearts. Everyone felt much closer to Shen Miao. Madame Yi said, "A joyous day makes people feel sad." Shen Miao also smiled. "It is my fault for disturbing everyone's mood." She walked to the table and took a wine bowl. That wine bowl was used by the men to drink. She also poured a full bowl for herself. The light yellow wine reflected her youthful appearance. A toast to apologize. She raised her head and downed the wine. Xie Jingxing's gaze suddenly darkened. He wanted to get up but had no choice but to suppress it. Shen Miao raised her chin. This bowl of wine was hurriedly poured, and some of the wine that could not be swallowed in time flowed down her neck and wet a small piece of her clothes, but it was still a beautiful and delicate beauty that made one's heart break. Her eyelashes were long and her eyes were clear. Forget it. She placed the bowl of wine on the table in an elegant and heroic manner. "I'll drink first as a sign of respect." This bowl of wine was well done. In the future, the heroic spirit in the hearts of her colleagues was ignited. They all picked up their wine bowls and smiled. "Qin Wang Fei has a good capacity for liquor." Cheers! Shen Miao smiled faintly, but that smile was somewhat unfathomable. She glanced at Yi Mei and her brother. Yi Mei and her brother were also staring at her. She looked outside. This bowl of wine had ignited the heat of the entire Bai Xiao Lu. After drinking till one's ears were hot, Shen Miao stood up and said to the female side of the banquet, "First go out to get some fresh air." He left on his own accord. Star Anise and Fennel were waiting for her outside as she walked towards the pavilion not far away. Shen Miao's throat only felt a burning sensation. That good wine was the strongest, but she did not feel drunk. It was just that the corners of her eyes seemed to be filled with hot tears from the spiciness. That cup of wine was a toast to her youngest daughter, the little princess who died tragically during the wedding ceremony. These people who were listening to the play felt that it was extremely tragic. Then what about her? What about Wan Yu? When she was alone with the wedding procession, did she feel even more despair, like she was in a raging fire but there was no source? She thought that she could endure it, but in the end she could not. As a mother, she would rather die 1,000 times than to let Wan Yu and Fu Ming suffer. Chapter 980. She walked step by step. The moonlight was as cold as water, but it could not blow away the desolation in her heart. There were already wine and food baskets in the pavilion. Octagonal Anise said, "Furen, the fireworks have been bought." Shen Miao complied. Just say it. She would be free after saying it. No matter how Xie Jingxing saw her in the future or what she had to face, she could endure it. Nothing would be worse than her previous lifetime. She could even endure those. Not being understood, estranged, and being looked at like a monster, what did it count as? Just as she was thinking, she heard a voice behind her. "Are you waiting for the prince of first rank?" Turning around to look, it was Pei Lang. Pei Lang glanced at the things on the table in the pavilion and smiled, "Did not think that you would do such a thing." Shen Miao asked him, "Why did you come out?" "Not used to this kind of place." Pei Lang said, "Cannot drink and plan to return first. Did not expect to see you preparing these." He said, "Are you planning to reconcile with the prince of first rank?" Shen Miao nodded her head. "Previously I often thought that there would not be anyone that you would submit to. Now I know that it is the prince of first rank." Pei Lang's smile had a trace of imperceptible sadness, but when he looked at Shen Miao again, it was still as light as the clouds and wind. "Even though it is surprising, one also feel that it is not surprising. Shen Miao smiled gently. At the same time, Xie Jingxing, who was in by Xiao Lu, swept a glance at Tai Yi and was about to get up to leave. Ji Yushu pulled the corner of his clothes. Today you are the birthday star. Why? You want to escape at the last moment. Let go. Xie Jingxing glanced at him. Ji Yushu obediently let go. What exactly are you going to do? Be so mysterious. Gao Yang said, why do you care so much about him? Xie Jingxing however looked sideways and looked at the Yi siblings who were talking to Yi Furan. His eyes could not help but darken. Shen Miao's attitude towards this pair of siblings was really too strange. It seemed to have exceeded her own rationality and became like another person. This pair of siblings from the Yi family did not seem to be simple. Even though Mou Jun could not find anything wrong, it was because of this that it made others feel suspicious. He suddenly thought of the letter that Tai Yi stuffed into his sleeves. That letter was written by Shen Miao to him. She didn't mention anything about apologizing. She just said that she had something to say to him at the birthday banquet in a pavilion in an alley not far from the Azure Heaven restaurant. Whether it was an apology or not, to Shen Miao, it was a big concession. Xie Jingxing was originally strong in appearance but weak in heart towards Shen Miao and was easy to coax. Putting on a cold face was also an act, but at the moment his heart was happy. He thought that if he didn't punish her for 3 days, she would tear the tiles off her roof. After hanging her out for a while, she really became more sensible. However, he couldn't bear to make her sad. It was just that she was dressed too flirtatiously in the hall just now, and the admiring gazes of the men that fell on her when she was playing the guqin. It just didn't make him happy. In the pavilion, Pei Lang and Shen Miao finished their conversation and intended to leave. Just as he walked down the steps, he bumped into an 8 or 9-year-old child. Pei Lang was caught off guard and was knocked down. Star Anise and Fennel were waiting for Xie Jingxing to come over at the other side. Shen Miao thought that in this late night, could it be that one of the young masters from the Azure Heaven restaurant came out to play? Seeing Pei Lang groaning softly, it seemed that the fall was not light. She decided to go over to take a look. Just as she walked in front of Pei Lang, she saw that child lying face down on the ground. She did not know how he was as Pei Lang was calling him. Shen Miao also squatted down and was about to speak when that child suddenly raised his head with an ominous glint in his eyes. Shen Miao was caught off guard and saw a silver snowy light stabbing towards her. At this moment it was too late to dodge, but she saw Pei Lang suddenly hugging her and turning over, his whole body protecting her under his body. Following that, there was a painful groan. But he refused to let go and protected Shen Miao tightly. That child did not care and kicked Pei Lang away, turned the knife and stabbed towards Shen Miao's body. A voice came from afar and the child's hand moved to the side. When he looked at Shen Miao again, it was the same as Pei Lang, the blade had entered her abdomen. Xie Jingxing was walking towards this direction with Fennel and Star Anise. Fennel said, Furan has been waiting for you for a while. Fearing that you are still angry, she has been waiting for you patiently. When you see Furan, you must be considerate of her. Xie Jingxing was expressionless, but a trace of smile flashed in his eyes. Bypassing the alley, they saw the pavilion. Before they got close, there was a strong smell of blood. Xie Jingxing's footsteps stopped. Star Anise and Fennel were also surprised. The moonlight was as bright as a lantern, illuminating the ground. It was supposed to be a refreshing and elegant scenery, but at this moment, it made one feel a chill from the bottom of one's heart. Large swathes of blood, and familiar faces. Chapter 981. Tonight in the residence of Prince Rui was exceptionally unusual. The servants that were coming and going in the courtyard had a grave expression, as if the sky had collapsed. Even the wind at night seemed to be icy cold, causing one's forehead to break out in cold sweat. Tai Yi followed beside the young male and whispered, "Master, no traces were found." Xie Jingxing swept a glance at him. The calmer his expression was, the more a black storm seemed to be brewing in his eyes, as if it would engulf the person in the next moment. He asked in reply, "No." Tai Yi shuddered, and just as he was about to speak, he saw Gao Yang walking out from inside. Gao Yang's body still reeked of alcohol, and it was obvious that he was hurriedly called over during the banquet. Luckily his eyes were clear and he was not drunk. He walked straight over and said, "Sister-in-law is fine." The knife wound did not injure any vital parts and had already ordered someone to bandage it. Most likely she fainted from the shock and had taken some calming medicine. She would be able to wake up tomorrow morning. Xie Jingxing's eyes were slightly at ease, and Tai Yi also gave a sigh of relief. He then heard Gao Yang saying, "But Pei Lang's injuries were very serious. The knife wound was too deep and there was a lot of blood. I have done everything that could be done. Whether he could pull through or not, it still depends on him." The meaning of his words was that whether Pei Lang could wake up would depend on whether his life was tough enough. It seems that it was Gentleman Pei who blocked this knife for Furen. Tai Yi said carefully. Even though Pei Lang's position in the residence of Prince Rui was somewhat subtle, one could not help but be grateful to him. This is not a good thing. Gao Yang looked at Xie Jingxing, who had a cold expression, and said, "If he really did not wake up." With sister-in-law's temperament, she would feel guilty in her heart for the rest of her life. Shen Miao was a person who was very clear about her feelings and did not like to owe favors to others. If one owed something to others, one would definitely return it. Pei Lang really saved with his life. In the future, when Shen Miao woke up and knew about the matter, if Pei Lang was not alive, one really did not dare to think what would happen to Shen Miao. Has Long Yi sealed the city gates? Xie Jingxing asked. Sealed. Tai Yi said, "The MOU Army Secret Department were all dispatched, but since the surrounding people did not discover it and Furen did not even have the time to call for help, that person either does not have martial arts or his technique is very brilliant." Xie Jingxing said, "There is no need to think. Capture him alive and beat him to death. The person behind this, check again." Tai Yi left under orders, and Xie Jingxing looked at Gao Yang again. "You stay here tonight. If the situation is critical, there is no need to walk back and forth." Gao Yang said, "I know." He then took a look at Xie Jingxing. "You should also rest first." His expression was very solemn. Not far from the Azure Sky building, he dared to attack Princess Rui. The courage of the other party was too big. Not only that, even Prince Rui's residence was not in their eyes. Most likely only the Liu family would have such guts in the Ding capital. But the Liu family would not start from Shen Miao's side, thus the meaning behind this matter was somewhat profound. No matter what, this was a signal that the hidden forces finally could not hold back and began to move. And the first person that they chose to sacrifice in the residence of Prince Rui was Shen Miao. But at the moment Xie Jingxing did not have the mind to care so much. He walked into the room and saw Shen Miao lying on the boat. Her face was pale and her eyes were closed with her eyelashes hanging down, making her look very weak. He sighed and sat down at the side of Shen Miao's bed. There was a food basket on the table in the room, and inside was the longevity noodles that Shen Miao instructed the Azure Sky Building's kitchen to specially make for her. Octagon Annie said that one was afraid that it was spoilt, so it was specially filtered with cold water. But now that so much time had passed, even if it was filtered, it was already stuck together. Chapter 982. Xie Jingxing thought about it and reached out to open the basket and took out the bowl from inside. The noodles in the bowl had already condensed into a paste and one could vaguely see the white noodles, green vegetables, and an egg yolk. When it was just taken out of the pot, it must have been fragrant. Now that it was cold, it was not tasty. Xie Jingxing took a pair of chopsticks and started to eat in big mouthfuls. Star Anise and Fennel said that Shen Miao had asked Guyu to buy a lot of fireworks, wine and dishes in a small pavilion not far from Baishaolu. It was the best place to watch the fireworks. She also specially instructed people to cook longevity noodles at the right time, presumably to make amends. The two of them fought for a while and in the end it was Shen Miao who lowered her head first. Star Anise also said that Shen Miao did not have a good time these days and Xie Jingxing's heart was relieved. He was a man and had to be more magnanimous and would not haggle over the past matters. Who knew that before the words of apology could be said, he saw Pei Lang and Shen Miao lying in a pool of blood. It was hard to describe the feeling at that moment. It was obviously the height of summer but one felt a chill from head to toe and lacked the courage to go forward to confirm. Fortunately nothing happened. Xie Jingxing's noodles tasted like wax and finally finished the bowl of noodles. He placed the empty bowl on the table and held Shen Miao's hand. But he regretted it. If he did not want to be angry with Shen Miao, why would Shen Miao want to make amends with him? If she did not go to the pavilion beside Baishaolu, perhaps this would not happen. Outside, Luo Tan had received the news and was hurrying over. When she saw Gao Yang, she first asked, "What happened to my youngest Biao sister?" "She is fine," Gao Yang said. Pei Lang blocked a knife for her. "Teacher Pei." Luo Tan was startled. "How is Teacher Pei?" "Not very good." Gao Yang shook his head. "Even you cannot save him?" Luo Tan asked. Gao Yang smiled bitterly. "I am a physician and not a bodhisattva. If everyone can be saved, no one would go to King Yama's palace." Luo Tan said, "Today I only know that youngest Biao's sister quarreled with brother-in-law and said that it was because youngest Biao's sister did not visit brother-in-law when he was ill. The Furins in Baishaolu were all saying that Biao Biao was not good and said that Biao Biao was cold and heartless. What did they know? When Biao's youngest sister was at the strange Taoist priest's place asking for medicine for brother-in-law, who among them saw it? You are being unreasonable. Strange Taoist. Gao Yang understood the crux of her words and asked, "What strange Taoist? What do you mean by asking for medicine?" Luo Tan was stunned for a moment and was annoyed that she had said the wrong thing. In a moment of carelessness, she thought that Shen Miao did not allow her to speak and said, "Nothing, I just casually said it. I will go and see youngest Biao's sister first." Finishing, he walked towards the room where Shen Miao was lying. Gao Yang pulled her back. "Don't go. Xie Jingxing is inside." "Ah." Luo Tan lowered her head, suddenly thinking of something, said, "Are you staying here tonight?" "I want to stay here and see what's going on with Pei Lang," Gao Yang said. "You can go back first." Luo Tan shook her head. "I am not going back. I will stay here and wait for youngest Biao's sister to wake up." Gao Yang knew that Luo Tan had a stubborn character and did not persuade much. This night, in everyone's heart, was exceptionally long. The matter of Shen Miao and Pei Lang being assassinated was concealed and everyone in Baishaolu did not know about it. They only thought that Xie Jingxing had left early and did not know that it was a sleepless night in Prince Rui's residence. This night, the servants were anxiously waiting for the ending. In the summer, the days were long and the nights were short. When the sun started to shine and the birds in the courtyard started to sing, the two rooms were silent. Chapter 983. Xie Jingxing looked at Gao Yang and asked, "What is the matter?" Gao Yang's brows were tightly knitted as he took Shen Miao's pulse and then Pei Lang's pulse. In front of everyone in the room, he shook his head. Strange. Pei Lang's injuries are too serious, but until now there is no movement. There should be some reaction, but it is like he is asleep. The princess' flesh and blood were not injured, and after taking the sedative, she should have woken up, but until now she has not woken up. So. Xie Jingxing's face was as heavy as water as he stared at Gao Yang aggressively. It is somewhat strange. Uncle Tang said cautiously, could it be another poison? It is just that physician Gao did not discover it previously. Impossible. Gao Yang flatly denied, both of their meridians are not signs of poison. Instead it is faintly discernible and one cannot see any problem, but they have not woken up. Then what can be done? Luo Tan was somewhat anxious. My youngest Biao sister cannot keep sleeping like this. There must be a reason. Gao Yang glanced at Xie Jingxing, and Xie Jingxing's gaze made him somewhat unable to withstand it, so he could only say, wait for another half a day and see. In this half a day, Xie Jingxing could only stay by Shen Miao's bedside, and not to mention half a day, even when it was deep into the night, Shen Miao still did not wake up. It was the same for Pei Lang. Uncle Tang asked Gao Yang, Gentleman Gao, what is going on? Even if Furen and Gentleman Pei did not wake up, there must be a reason. Even you cannot see the reason. Pei Lang's heart was filled with unspeakable bitterness. Until now Shen Miao and Pei Lang did not have any symptoms, but they just could not wake up. Even a physician would have to judge based on the patient's reaction, but other than the faintly discernible pulse, it was like an ordinary person sleeping. How could he see it? It was just that facing Xie Jingxing's increasingly cold and sharp gaze, Gao Yang also felt the pressure. Afterwards Ji Yushu also rushed over when he got the news, and everyone was worried together. Luo Tan could not help it and was so anxious that she was about to get angry. She was about to cry as she said, could it be that I have offended something these days? First it was brother-in-law, and now it is youngest Biao's sister. If anything happens to youngest Biao's sister, how can I explain to Gugu and Gufu? She blew her nose again. I came here and swore that I would protect little cousin sister. Who knew that little cousin sister would end up in such a state? I'm so ashamed. Gao Yang patted her on the shoulder. It's not your fault. If I stay by her side, at least no one will be able to take advantage of her. Finishing, she thought of something and said angrily, there is also brother-in-law. If he was not angry with Biao youngest sister, he would not let people follow Biao youngest sister to attack Biao youngest sister. Gao Yang was helpless. The matters between Xie Jingxing and Shen Miao was really not something that he could meddle in. It was a fact that Luo Tan was in a state of rage, and it was a fact that Shen Miao refused to wake up. If youngest Biao youngest sister does not wake up, then he will regret it. Luo Tan said angrily, those Furens are biased. He is always the person beside youngest Biao youngest sister's pillow and still do not believe that youngest Biao youngest sister has no feelings for him. She thought about it and clenched her fists. After thinking about it, there is no need to hide this matter from brother-in-law. Youngest Biao youngest sister had done so much for him, but in the end she was taken advantage of by others. If youngest Biao youngest sister is really not good, then one must let her speak clearly. If youngest Biao youngest sister does not speak, then let me speak. What do you want to say? Ji Yushu asked curiously. Luo Tan glared at him. Of course it is a bigger credit than that pair of siblings from the Yi family. Luo Tan went to find Xie Jingxing in a huff, and Gao Yang was afraid that she would cause trouble, so he quickly followed behind. When they reached the door, they saw Xie Jingxing coming out of the room with a calm face. Ever since Shen Miao's accident, Xie Jingxing's expression had not changed. Chapter 984. Luo Tan said, Prince Rui. She did not call him a brother-in-law anymore. Xie Jingxing swept a glance at her. Shen Miao did not wake up and his heart was vexed. He had no patience with others and his face was awe-inspiring. But Luo Tan had a temperament that did not care about anything, and when her temper flared up, she was not afraid of even the Heavenly Emperor. She said, "Biao youngest sister did not allow me to tell me previously, but now that she is lying on the bed, if she does not say it, I will say it. I do not have any scruples and did not think as much as she did. It would be too much of a loss to hide what I did and not let others know." Uncle Tang, Tai Yi and the rest who rushed over after hearing the news were also standing at the side and looked at Luo Tan with some surprise. Those Furans all said that when you were bedridden, Biao youngest sister did not come to see you. You felt that you were left out and Biao youngest sister is a heartless person, so you were unhappy and got angry with her. Luo Tan stared at him and said, "But you do not know that she did not come to see you during those days, not because she did not want to but because she went out of the city to seek medicine for you." Going out of the city to seek medicine for Xie Jingxing. When Xie Jingxing's eyes landed on Tai Yi lowered his head and did not dare to look at Xie Jingxing's eyes. Previously it was because Shen Miao let the servants hide it, but after Shen Miao returned, she inexplicably started a cold war with Xie Jingxing. Once Xie Jingxing's heart turned cold, the surrounding people would not dare to touch him at this juncture. One wanted to wait for a few days before speaking, but one did not expect such a thing to happen. "Speak clearly." Xie Jingxing took a step forward. Luo Tan said, "You do not know, right? It was said that there was an expert in Phoenix Head Manor who could go against the heavens and change one's fate." She glanced at Gao Yang. At that time Gao Yang was refining the antidote for you and Biao youngest sister gave you the 3 vitality recovery pills, but it could only protect your life for a while. If the antidote was not found within 10 days, your life would not be guaranteed. But on the 4th day, your condition was critical and the imperial physician said that you would not last past 7 days. Biao youngest sister heard the legend of the expert in Phoenix Head Manor and brought me and a few guards to Phoenix Head Manor. Xie Jingxing's gaze shook. What kind of person was Shen Miao? She was rational and astute in analyzing the pros and cons. Moreover, she did not seem to believe in ghosts and gods. She actually believed in such absurd words like defying the heavens and changing one's fate. She was really desperate and anxious. The Phoenix Head Manor isn't far from Longyi, but it's extremely difficult to find the place where the expert lives. That day we rushed through the night and almost lost our way in the forest. There was also a pack of wolves, but Biao Mei was not the least bit afraid and insisted on lighting a torch to find the way through the night, fearing that she would not be able to come back in time to save you. On the 2nd day, we found that master. That master used the art of Chimen Dun Jia to bring me and Biao Mei, who had no martial arts, into the valley. He said that there was a spirit grass that could cure hundreds of poisons, but his little cousin had to pay a price. Actually, the price was not that difficult. It did not require money or lives. We need people to pick out the bugs from the red sleeve grass in the valley and fertilize them one by one. Gao Yang and Ji Yushu were surprised and Uncle Tang and Tai Yi were even more shocked. They had never heard of these things from others and did not know of the origins. Uncle Tang's heart was suddenly enlightened. No wonder Shen Miao was in such a sorry state when she returned to the residence. Compared to Yi Mei, it was even more unbecoming of Rui Wang Fei's decency. At that time he did not know the reason, but now he understood. It turned out that Shen Miao did not sleep that night and was busy being a gardener because she was seeking medicine for Xie Jingxing. For a moment there were some sighs. To be able to condescend to do all these, other than being able to bend and stand tall, what was more valuable was the intention. Chapter 985. But Luo Tan's anger seemed to be vented the more she spoke. Does it sound like there is nothing much? But she had been spoiled since she was a child. filling the entire valley. Even those peasant women were not able to do it alone. She did not sleep earlier and immediately started to move and was busy for the entire night. You people who live extravagantly, most likely have never touched a fat pole in your entire life. Since she could do this, why is she lower than that pair of siblings? Luo Tan looked at Xie Jingxing and said, "It is true that the Yi siblings saved you, and they do have a life-saving grace, but my youngest Biao sister is not inferior. Say that she was not by your side, but you can go and ask the servants in the residence of the prince of first rank. Before she left the residence, how many days did she stay by your bedside? Did she leave? Did she take care of you without rest? Could it be that she could not be compared to the Yi siblings that she only met once? Now that my youngest Biao sister has fallen to this stage, I feel wronged for her. When His Highness the Prince of First Rank married her back to the Great Liang, what did he promise? But you can't even believe her. Even though she has many faults, there is one point that is beyond doubt. Her sincerity is beyond doubt." When Luo Tan finished speaking, her face was already flushed red, as if all the suppressed anger in her heart had been swept away. She then looked at Xie Jingxing's expression. There was no sadness or joy and his expression was calm. But the calmer he was, the more one felt a chill. It was as if under the calmness, there was a boundless storm. "Finished speaking?" he slowly asked. This tone was so cold that Luo Tan could not help but shrink her neck. Gao Yang quickly stood up and said, "Now is not the time to pursue this. The urgent matter is to think of how to wake both of them up." Xie Jingxing sneered, "Is this not simple? Just capture the Yi siblings." Ji Yushu was surprised for a moment. "Third older brother, what do you want to do?" Since she is abnormal for the Yi siblings, then there must be a problem with the Yi siblings. No matter if they are the ones behind the scenes or not, there is no reason to spare them. Xie Jingxing turned around and was about to leave. But he was pulled back by Gao Yang. "No. Now they are not the powerless Li family but the Yi family. What is the outcome of alarming the Yi family? Let go." Xie Jingxing said coldly. "Calm down." Gao Yang said, "If Wang Fei really hates the Yi siblings, she must have compromised for so long because she did not want to harm herself. Aren't you dragging her down?" "Not bad, third older brother." Ji Yushu also chimed in, "The Yi family is not some small family in Long Yi. If you take action like this, one fear that it will bring trouble to the residence of the Prince of First Rank. She can endure, but I cannot." Xie Jingxing said, "The Yi family has touched their bottom line." Third older brother. Ji Yushu still wanted to persuade, but suddenly Ba Jiao's voice was heard from outside the courtyard. The usually smiling maid now seemed to be a little flustered. "Master, someone is coming." Tai Yi frowned slightly as if he was dissatisfied with Octagonal Anice's loss of composure. He asked, "Who is it?" "It's the Taoist priest whom Madame met the other day at Fengtu Manor," Octagonal Anice said hesitantly. "What?" Luo Tan's eyes widened. Ji Yushu, who was grabbing onto Xie Jingxing's sleeves, could not help but let go and looked at the octagon. "Priest." Octagonal Anice nodded his head. In the hall, that strange Taoist priest who was dressed in tattered clothes was touching this and looking at that, as if it was the first time he entered the residence, and his eyes were filled with curiosity. Shi Xiang and Song Yang stood awkwardly at the side. They were acquainted with Qi Yen Taoist priest. But when Qi Yen Taoist priest entered the door, he used such a familiar tone to establish a relationship with the both of them, making them somewhat uncomfortable. Chapter 986. When Xie Jingxing and entourage came to the hall, Priest Qi Yen was preparing to remove the gem eyes of a red-crowned crane from a vase and asked Fennel, "Can this poor Taoist take this away?" Priest Qi Yan. Luo Tan shouted when she saw him. When Qi Yan saw her, he smiled, "Young Lady Luo, long time no see." Luo Tan secretly pondered in her heart. It was obvious that not much time had passed, but she could not care about other things at the moment and said, "You came over because you know that something happened to my youngest Biao sister and specially came to change her fate?" Even though Luo Tan felt that this priest Qi Yan was deliberately making things difficult for others, but he seemed to have some ability, or else Shen Miao would not believe the other party so much. Priest Qi Yan looked at the silent Xie Jingxing behind Luo Tan and smiled. "This poor Taoist cannot change fate and can only read fortunes. This young brother, what do you think?" "I do not believe in the heavenly way," Xie Jingxing said. "The heavenly way is not trustworthy, so why would humans persist in seeking answers from the heavenly way?" Priest Qi Yan shook his head and said, "This foreign's fate is strange and others are unable to fathom it, and it is all up to her own choice. Neither you nor I can do anything about it." Luo Tan could not understand Priest Qi Yan's words and quickly asked, "Taoist, what should my youngest Biao sister do now? Is the spiritual herb that I gave her still there?" Priest Qi Yan asked. Luo Tan was puzzled. "When we returned, the Prince of First Rank's poison had already been cured, so naturally the herb was useless. One do not know where youngest Biao's sister placed it. This servant seems to know," Jingzhi said and brought everyone to Shen Miao's room. Sure enough, she found a dusty box under the dressing table and opened it to take a look. There was a stalk of ordinary-looking medicinal herb inside. Luo Tan's eyes were sharp and said, "It is this. Take it and fry it." Qi Yan stroked his beard. "Wait." Xie Jingxing looked at the strange Taoist. "Why should I believe you? You cannot believe this poor Taoist, but you have no other choice." Taoist priest Scarlet Flame let out a long sigh. "This herb was found by this madam, but when I first found it, I said that it would be futile. Even without this herb, you would still be safe and sound. There is no such calamity in your fate, and everything she did was in vain." Everyone was stunned when they heard. However, it was not in vain. Strange Taoist priest's face showed some relief. "Those who love others will always love them, those who save others will always be saved." If she had been a little bit insincere and perfunctory back then in the valley, she wouldn't have obtained this stock of spiritual herb and she wouldn't be here today. In the name of saving you, this spiritual herb is actually saving her. She sacrificed herself for you. At this moment, Luo Tan faintly heard some clues and asked, "You mean, you already knew that this spirit grass would not be used on the prince, but on my Biaomei? Youngest Yan would Tian's foreign, and you have Tian and Yan's fate and son, so foreign." Strange Taoist looked at Luo Tan and said with a smile, "You are worth teaching." Xie Jingxing stared at him. "You want her to be a herb farmer?" There was a murderous intent in his eyes. The Taoist took a step back and hid behind Gao Yang. He coughed twice and said, "She has such a calamity in her life, and this poor Taoist has reduced it to the smallest. Compared to her life, isn't it much easier to be a herb farmer? But why is she still not awake?" Gao Yang was puzzled. "I am also a doctor and have checked her illness, but I could not find the source. There seems to be nothing wrong with her. She should have woken up today, but she has not woken up for so long. What is the reason?" The Taoist said, "This poor Taoist said that this is a calamity in her fate." "What do you mean by tribulation? I don't understand." Luo Tan said, "Why don't you tell us directly? After my youngest Biao sister ate that herb, when will she wake up?" Qi Yan smiled. "The herb is not for her to eat, it is for another injured person to eat." "The other injured person, could it be Pei Lang?" Xie Jingxing whispered, "If you dare to play tricks, I can take your life now. The evil aura is too heavy." Qi Yan shook his head. that person gave up his life for Furen, but it was because of some entanglements in his life. This Furen obtained the herb and just happened to be able to settle this debt. Then what about my sister-in-law? Ji Yushu asked. Strange Taoist looked at Shen Miao, who was lying on the bed. Her expression was calm as if she was asleep, but her face was pale and there was a feeling of unreality. She picked out the bugs for the red sleeve grass in my valley, but she could not pick out the bugs in her heart. This calamity is a blessing for her and also a misfortune. This poor Taoist had met her 3 times and was worried about her twice. This last meeting with her is for the sake of this fate. The matters of the human world are not perfect, there are regrets and unwillingness. She wanted to seek an answer, but no one told her. Strange Taoist narrowed his eyes. Now she has found a way, and the answer that she is seeking is right in front of her. No one can help her. You cannot, she cannot, and this poor Taoist cannot. So wait patiently. The Taoist looked at Xie Jingxing. That's your fate. Chapter 987. The yellow sand was endless and the wind was blowing the flags. There were many wind and frost along the way, and the sun, moon and stars were just decorations. The escorting guards were scattered and did not have much respect for the people in the carriage. A maid-like young lady walked over from the back of the convoy and jumped onto the carriage before handing a bowl of porridge to the person inside. Your ladyship, the porridge is a little cold, but it can still be eaten. Currently there is no village ahead or inns behind, so it is better for you to have a mouthful. The female in the carriage was still young, but her expression was very haggard and her attire was not very exquisite. Upon closer look, it was the style from a few years ago, and because she was skinny, it did not fit her body. She lifted up the curtain of the carriage and asked, "Where are we now?" "Walk a bit more and one would be able to reach the official road before dark." Bai Lu smiled. This servant had asked those people, and within 5 days, one would definitely be able to return to the Ding capital. Shuangjiang also smiled. Once one returns to the palace, your ladyship's bitterness will be over and sweetness will come. Bitterness will be over and sweetness will come. Shen Miao smiled bitterly. Broken people would not be able to return. She was talking about Jingzhe and Guyu. Hearing this, Bai Lu and Shuangjiang's eyes were filled with sorrow and no longer spoke. Jingzhe was willing to be a concubine in order to rope in the powerful officials, and in the first year that Shen Miao went to the Qin country, news came that the wife of the powerful official found a reason to beat her to death. As for Guyu, Shen Miao clenched her fists but died in Huangfu Hao's hands to protect her. 5 years. A full 5 years. In the 5 years in the Qin country, the last bit of arrogance in her body was ground away. She clenched her teeth and compromised just so that one day she could return to her homeland and reunite with her pair of children. However, the heavy price they had to pay for this was not something that could be described by outsiders. How difficult was this journey? There were not even many escorting guards, and just looking at the convoy of carriages, who would have thought that this was the honor guard of a country's empress? The people she brought to the Qin kingdom at that time had either died or dispersed in the past 5 years, and they were almost gone. Just like on this journey back to the country, if not for Mo Qing's protection, she would definitely not be able to return alive. Shen Miao sighed. Fortunately, all the suffering was not in vain. 5 years had finally passed. Just as he was thinking about it, it was time for the carriage to continue its journey. However, not only did it not start, there was a commotion in front of them. She frowned slightly and lifted the curtain of the carriage to ask, "What's going on?" Mo Qing walked over from the front and said, "I met a strange person and came over to ask for water." Before he finished speaking, one saw an old man dressed in gray appearing behind him and looked at Shen Miao with a grin. "Furen, I am dying of thirst. Give me some water to drink." This old man was dressed in a strange manner and his body was smelly as he stared straight at one, making one suspicious. It was not that he was not willing to give water to drink, but Shen Miao's identity was special and if she met someone with evil intentions, one feared that something would happen. Mo Qing ordered people to hold back this old man and not let him go near Shen Miao. However, Shen Miao smiled and said, "There is a drought along the way and the heavens are not happy. A bowl of water is equivalent to a life. Give it to him." I do not lack this bowl of water to drink." Since Shen Miao had spoken, Mo Qing was straightforward and ordered people to bring a bowl of clear water for the old man. The old man gulped it down in one gulp and patted his stomach before pushing away the guard's hand and stood up. He gave a proper bow to Shen Miao and said, "Furen is kind and generous and saved this poor Taoist's life. This poor Taoist must repay this bowl of water." Poor Taoist. Shen Miao was surprised for a moment before smiling. "Are you a Taoist?" "My Buddhist name is Qi Yen." That strange old man looked at Shen Miao and shook his head. "Furen's appearance is extremely valuable but one's life is shallow and cannot bear the noble fortune." Chapter 988. What nonsense are you talking about? Bai Lu frowned and looked at Shen Miao. "Mother. Furen, it might be some Jianghu swindler. Do not listen to his nonsense." Mo Qing also made a move to drive this strange old man away. "Wait." Shen Miao said, "It is quite boring along the way. Listen to what others say." That old man pretended to bow again. There is black air between Furen's brows. One fear that it is not good. At the end of the road, it is an ominous sign. If one were to turn the horse around, one would be able to avoid this calamity. Furen, this poor Taoist still advise you that this road is the Yellow Springs and one must not walk on it. Once walked, one cannot turn back. The more you speak, the more excessive it is. Shuangjiang was so angry that her face was livid. "Who are you cursing?" Shen Miao, however, had a good temper. She had stayed in the Qin country for a long time and when facing anyone from Mingqi, she would have the joy of meeting someone from her hometown. Even if this old man was speaking nonsense, she was not angry and only smiled. "Many thanks, Taoist priest, for the reminder, but I must walk on this road. My children are on this road and I have to return home." The strange Taoist priest sighed deeply, as expected. He looked at Shen Miao, "Meeting by chance, this is fate for you." Finishing, he took out a red string from his sleeves and was about to pass it to Shen Miao but was stopped by Mo Qing. He could only hand the red string over to Mo Qing and when Mo Qing did not see anything strange, he then handed it over to Shen Miao. "This red string is this poor Taoist's token of gratitude to Furen. Furen can tie it on your wrist and you will be able to achieve your own fate." He solemnly said, "Furen must remember that the way of heaven is treacherous and depends on human effort. This poor Taoist can see one's fate but cannot change it. The person who can change Furen's fate is not this poor Taoist. The heavens have the virtue of cherishing life and if there is a calamity there is also fate. This red string is a question and one day Furen will also find your own solution." Finishing, he laughed out a few times before turning around and striding away. This Taoist priest was very mysterious and the few prophecies that he said were extremely inauspicious, thus Bai Lu and Shuangjiang were somewhat unhappy. Bai Lu said, "Your ladyship must not take that strange person's words to heart. Most likely his mind is not clear. Don't wear this thing." Shuangjiang also said, "It is very inauspicious." But Shen Miao looked left and right and felt that the red string was extremely cute and inexplicably loved it so much that she could not bear to part with it. Instead she tied it on her wrist and smiled. "I have already said that since it is fate, it is also fate for us to meet by chance, so just wear it. It doesn't matter if it's fake. Isn't it better if it's real and has more spirituality?" Since the words were spoken like this, Bai Lu and Shuangjiang could not say anything more. Mo Qing said to the carriages in front to set off and started to move again. The sandstorm in the distance almost covered their figures, but the strange old man's figure could no longer be seen on the road ahead. Upon returning to Mingqi, it was not like what Shuangjiang said, bitterness is over, sweetness begins. The world was constantly changing. The situation would change, and so would people's hearts. As the Empress, apart from this position, there was nothing special about her. Sometimes when he thought about it, he felt that it was no better than the days when he was humiliated in the Qin kingdom. When he was in the Qin country, those injuries were on the surface, but in Mingqi, it was in the dark. It was as if one had suffered a hidden loss and one could not say it out loud, but one would be laughed at for nothing. Shen Miao sat in the Kuan Ning Palace and looked at the somewhat withered red sleeve grass on the table. The red sleeve grass was sent over by Mo Qing and was said to be a rare spiritual herb. It looked very good and was like a woman's sleeves that fluttered in the wind, thus it was named red sleeve grass. It was just that one did not know why it had recently withered and Shen Miao was not in the mood to take care of it. She had been back in Mingqi for a few years and in these few years, her life was not considered good. Chapter 989. There was an additional Mei Furen in the inner palace. Mei Furen was delicate and intelligent, charming and gentle, like a riddle that attracted one's gaze to her for a long time, unwilling to leave. In the beginning, there were times of heartbreak. The man that she once loved would use that kind of doting gaze to look at the woman beside him. She thought that he treated everyone with the same coldness, but later discovered that it was not the case. It was just that that person was not herself. After many days of heartbreak, she gradually became numb. The pain and dispiritedness gradually turned into hatred and unwillingness. Because of Fu Xing. Fu Xing always took away too much of Fu Xiuyi's favor, and her child, Fu Ming, was obviously sitting in the crown prince's position and was obviously talented and hardworking, but at the end he was like a prince that had fallen out of favor. Fu Xiuyi could personally teach Fu Xing how to write and discuss politics, but was stingy to give Fu Ming a look of concern. When asked, he would say that Fu Ming was the crown prince and must be mature and steady. What was the matter with pestering imperial father every day? But every time she saw Fu Ming's disappointed eyes, Shen Miao's heart would feel as if a knife was being twisted in her heart. The Shen family was also not doing well. Luo Shuiyan's illness was getting worse and Jing Chu and Shen Qiu were dragging it out. The Shen family's reputation was getting worse, and Shen Xian had aged a lot. Fu Xiuyi seemed to be suppressing the Shen family and Shen Miao was faintly aware of it. But how could one in the inner palace clearly know about the matters in court? The only way she could come into contact with these was through Pei Lang, but Pei Lang was loyal to Fu Xiuyi. Even though Pei Lang's relationship with her was not bad, but he would always be loyal to Fu Xiuyi first. Shen Miao's infatuation with Fu Xiuyi had long turned into ice after watching him being together with Mei Furen for the past few years. But in her position, she had to sit firmly in the position of Empress and fight for some opportunities for Fu Ming and Wan Yu. There was news from the Xiongnu side that Mei Furen seemed to want to urge Fu Xiuyi to marry Wan Yu over. This was what Shen Miao could not tolerate. However, Mei Furen's methods were getting more and more brilliant. Everyone could see Fu Xiuyi's doting towards Fu Xing. The Shen family was getting worse day by day and there were too many people who stood at Mei Furen's side. Throwing stones at someone who was down, everyone wanted to step on them. In addition, Mei Furen's brother, Li Ku, had recently helped Fu Xiuyi to settle several important matters, thus Mei Furen's status in the inner palace rose steadily. Shen Miao knew what the officials were thinking. They were thinking about when to change the crown prince and when to abolish the empress. But Fu Xiuyi still wanted to save face. She was the first wife, and for Mei Furen to go over her head, it would not be that simple. She fought back and forth, going round and round, but her heart was already exhausted. If it wasn't for this pair of children, he sometimes felt that it would be better to burn the entire palace to the ground. That way, the world would be at peace. Bai Lu walked in and said, "Nyang Nyang, the clothes for the palace banquet have been prepared. It is better to comb your hair early." Shen Miao complied. Shuang Jiang had died a year ago, and Mei Furen's methods were very good. She did not even let off the maid by her side. After going around in circles, only Bai Lu was left. Tonight was the Ming Qi's palace banquet. The new year was approaching, and Fu Xiaoyi wanted to reward the officials. Of course, the most important thing was to send off the little Marquis of the residence of the Marquis of Linen, Xie Jingxing. The Marquis of Linen, Xie Ding, died in the battlefield of the northern Jiang, and now his son was going out to battle again. In fact, this timing was not good, and one would feel that this departure was somewhat tragic, but Xie Jingxing still accepted the commander request. Shen Miao and Xie Jingxing did not have much interaction because of the subtle relationship between the Shen and Xie families. Ever since the time of Xie Ding in the residence of the Marquis of Linen, only Xie Jingxing was supporting the door. This unavoidably made one sigh. Initially the southern Xia and northern Shen, until now the Shen family was getting worse day by day, and the Xia family was also gradually declining. It really made one sympathize with the death of the rabbit. Chapter 990. But Xie Jingxing had his own path to walk, so how would Shen Miao's own path not be difficult? She said, "Comb the hair." The musical instruments confused one's heart. This palace banquet was exceptionally lively. Fu Xiaoyi had not been this happy for a long time. His usual stern expression was much gentler, and his smile became especially joyful. Shen Miao looked coldly at Fu Xing, giving him a toast and the happy and harmonious appearance of the father and son, but her heart was somewhat cold. Fu Ming sat at one side, and Wan Yu also sat properly. Those officials always praised the crown prince and princess for being so sensible at such a young age and had the demeanor of a little adult. This kind of dignified bearing was not something that everyone was able to grow up to. Even though it was polite words, it was not far from the truth. But one did not think that if one could wantonly act coquettishly, who would be willing to be sensible? Sensible was just forced out. Wan Yu and Fu Ming also tried hard to be close to Fu Xiaoyi, but children's thoughts were the most direct and pure. They could feel Fu Xiaoyi's coldness and gradually became polite and courteous. Shen Miao sat beside Fu Xiaoyi but saw that Fu Xiaoyi would exchange glances with Mei Furen from time to time. Mei Furen was smiling happily, and Fu Xiaoyi also had a slight smile on his face. Shen Miao thought that both of them must be really happy. But what about the main character of this palace banquet? Shen Miao involuntarily looked towards the man on the left side of the banquet. That young man's appearance was peerlessly handsome, and his posture was indolent as he sat diagonally. His dark purple robes were somewhat large, but it could not hide his high spirits. His lips had a smile as he slowly drank his wine, as if the noise in the banquet had nothing to do with him and was incompatible with the liveliness. Shen Miao laughed in her heart and felt that this little Marquis of the residence of the Marquis of Lin and was somewhat similar to her. The banquet was lively and joyous, but in fact the heart was not happy. Xie Jingxing wanted to walk on a bloody path where life and death were uncertain, and she did not know what the ending of her life would be. Being attacked from all sides and besieged on all sides, it was a matter of life and death hanging by a thread. She also took a wine cup and poured herself wine to drink. She drank one mouthful at a time, but she was extremely restrained. The Empress had to be dignified and elegant and must not be a pampered concubine. When the banquet was over, the guests dispersed in twos and threes. She sat in her seat and heard Mei Furen say, "Your Majesty, tonight this concubine has prepared good wine. Your Majesty and this concubine will watch the fireworks together." Xing Er also said that he wants to compete with Your Majesty in chess skills. Fu Xiaoyi laughed and pointed at Mei Furan's nose. "This competitive nature is exactly the same as you." Shen Miao's sentence, "Wan Yu and the Crown Prince also want to accompany the Emperor throughout the year," was swallowed back. Looking back, the sadness in the eyes of the two children made her heart ache. However, he endured the pain and put on a calm expression. But on this new year, he couldn't fall asleep no matter what. She coaxed the two children to sleep and felt that the two children were not enthusiastic about the arrival of the new year. There were sounds of fireworks coming from the palace walls. It was already late that night, and in this kind of night, Mei Furan's palace was the best place to see fireworks. The three of them must be very affectionate. Shen Miao put on her clothes and ordered Bai Lu to bring a jar of wine and a bowl before she went to the garden. From the corner of the garden, one could see the fireworks. Only a small half of the fireworks could be seen, but even a small half was extremely gorgeous, almost lighting up the entire sky.
One could imagine the other end, to be able to see the whole picture, what kind of scenery it was. She took out a bowl and Bai Lu was somewhat distressed. Shen Miao waved her hands, telling her not to open her mouth.
Chapter 991. This firework is really beautiful. Shen Miao's voice was low and there was a hint of drunkenness. When can one watch a complete set? She suddenly smiled again, most likely not. Just as she was speaking, she heard footsteps coming from behind. Boots stepped on the snow, making a sha-sha-sha sound. Bai Lu jumped in shock. "You all..." Shen Miao turned back and saw someone brushing away the heavy shadows of the trees and walking forward. A person dressed as a guard was at the back and the person standing in front was tall, wearing a purple robe and green boots. That pair of peach blossom eyes reflected the fireworks in the night, making it exceptionally bright and moving, looking very beautiful. Marquis Xiao of the residence of the Marquis of Linen. Shen Miao narrowed her eyes as she looked at him. That person seemed to be somewhat surprised and made a tisked sound. Fu Xiaoyi's Empress is actually a drunkard. The guard behind him said, "Master, we should leave." Bai Lu was also somewhat nervous as she did not know why Xie Jingxing was still in the palace. But an empress and an official, if they were to be seen standing together, one did not know what would happen. Especially these days Shen Miao was struggling in the palace, and once someone caught hold of a reason, they would not hesitate to splash dirty water on her. At this time, it was better to be as far away from this air of the residence of the Marquis of Lin, and Bai Lu did not dare to disturb others, and this garden was very remote, so she said in a small voice, "Shi Ziyi, the Empress is slightly drunk and this servant is about to help her back. Shi Ziyi, please pretend not to see it." Xie Jingxing glanced at Shen Miao and laughed. He did not seem to be interested and turned around to leave. "Wait!" Shen Miao called out to him. Bai Lu was startled and could not wait to cover Shen Miao's mouth. But Shen Miao stared at Xie Jingxing. She was somewhat drunk at this moment. Ever since she went to the Qin country, she had never wantonly drank wine. However, the saying of a cup of wine to solve 1,000 worries was not false. When one was drunk, one would be relaxed and would do many things that one would not do on normal days. She said, "Ben Gong heard that you are going to the northern Jiang." Xie Jingxing hugged his chest and said with a smile that was not a smile, "What instructions does Empress have?" Tai Yi and Bai Lu stared at Shen Miao. Shen Miao smiled and took out the bowl that she had just drunk from the table and poured the wine from the jar into it. She indicated to Xie Jingxing to see, young talent, an eternal character, outstanding and unparalleled in the world. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows and Bai Lu was so embarrassed that she could not wait to drag Xie Jingxing away. How would one praise a flower in front of others? Beijiang is a very bad place. Shen Miao patted his shoulders. Her stature was petite and she had to tiptoe when she patted others' shoulders. She then looked at Xie Jingxing and said half seriously and half drunkenly, "Heard from father that not even a blade of grass grows there and the terrain is treacherous. There are many poisonous snakes and insects and it is easy to fall into a trap. Your trip will be fraught with danger." This official thanks Nyang Nyang for her concern. Xie Jingxing casually said, "Thousands of years of infamy in the annals of history, a loyal heart to repay the Son of Heaven." She gulped down the wine in her mouth and waved the bowl in Xie Jingxing's hand before swallowing it in one gulp. Bai Lu and Tai Yi jumped in shock. The former did not think that Shen Miao would drink it just like that, and the latter was surprised that the Empress would be so forthright. Shen Miao wiped her mouth and gave a burp. "This is Ben Gong's toast to you. You must return triumphantly." Xie Jingxing stared at her. Her lips still had some wine that had not been wiped clean and was sparkling on the side of her lips. It was very beautiful, and under the moonlight, her face had a delicateness that could not be seen during the day. Without the layer of Empress shackles, she was actually a very delicate and pretty female. Chapter 992. His lips hooked up and there was some evilness in his smile as he slowly said, "It seems that the Emperor has given the Empress a cold shoulder." Bai Lu's eyes widened. This Xie Jingxing's words were too presumptuous, but she did not dare to directly drag Shen Miao away in case Shen Miao made any noise and alarmed others, then she would not be able to clear her name. After Shen Miao finished drinking, she swayed as she picked up the wine jar and poured a full bowl before handing it to Xie Jingxing. "You also drink." "Why should I drink?" Xie Jingxing was baffled. "You and Ben Gong are in the same boat," Shen Miao said. "Who is in the same boat as you?" Xie Jingxing found it funny. Shen Miao had already raised the wine bowl and was about to feed it to his mouth. Bai Lu turned pale with fright. This was too ambiguous. Tai Yi was also extremely surprised, but Xie Jingxing did not speak, so he would not make a move. Xie Jingxing was caught off guard, and when he pushed Shen Miao away, a lot of wine spilled onto his clothes, but when he looked at Shen Miao, he finally smiled in satisfaction. She said, "You and I have a bowl of wine of affection. When you return in triumph, then come and watch the fireworks with Ben Gong." Xie Jingxing felt that today was really inexplicable. So when a female was drunk, they would not be rational. Even the usually dignified and elegant Empress was like a different person. "Your Highness the Empress, it is better to find His Majesty to watch." He tidied up his clothes. Shen Miao was sad. Ben Gong have never watched fireworks with him. Xie Jingxing stared at the female opposite. Her head was slightly lowered and the corner of her mouth was raised, but her eyes were bitter. His heart inexplicably softened a little and said, "Good, good, good. This official promises you." Shen Miao's eyes brightened as she looked at him. "Then it is settled." Xie Jingxing nodded his head. Shen Miao thought about it and shook her head. "Words have no basis. One must have a token." She then started to touch the hairpin in her hair. Bai Lu was surprised for a moment and secretly thought that it was not good. If the Empress thing was on Xie Jingxing's body, then it would be a crime of adultery. He was afraid that Shen Miao would give any handkerchief or hairpin to the other party, and suddenly saw the red string on Shen Miao's wrist. He had an inspiration and said, "Your ladyship, your red string is very good." Shen Miao's eyes landed on the red rope and her heart moved. She quickly untied it and took Xie Jingxing's hands and tied it for him seriously. Xie Jingxing's gaze landed on her slightly raised eyelashes. They were moist and seemed to be mixed with the cold air of winter. It inexplicably made one's heart itch. Shen Miao fastened it for him and smiled at him. This is Ben Gong's token for you. Take this as a letter and wait for your triumphant return. Thank you, Your Highness. Xie Jingxing smiled carelessly, but this official does not have any token to give to Empress. Why don't I give the Empress a wish? Wish? Shen Miao looked at him. When we meet again in triumph, this subject can grant Your Highness a wish. The wish that Your Highness wants, this subject can fulfill it. I will do my best to fulfill it. Shen Miao said, it is a promise. It is a promise. With a boom sound, a corner of the sky was once again illuminated by the bright fireworks. Both of them looked at it at the same time, but it was as if they had a tacit understanding and were exceptionally in sync. Bai Lu was also stunned. Fireworks were fleeting, but some things would not disappear, such as this night. When Shen Miao woke up again, she only felt a splitting headache. As she rubbed her forehead, she stood up and walked to the table, actually slept for such a long time. Bai Lu brought the hot soup to her and said, Your Highness drank too much yesterday. Sober up first. Drank too much. Shen Miao's movements paused. One did not drink much at the palace banquet. Bai Lu was somewhat guilty, most likely the wine in the palace banquet was too strong. Shen Miao nodded her head and sighed. Ben Gong's bad habit of not remembering anything once drunk has not changed for so many years. But it has been a long time since I was drunk. Bai Lu nodded her head and heard Shen Miao looking at her empty wrist. Why did the red rope disappear? Bai Lu said softly, most likely it was lost. Shen Miao sighed, indeed it would not last long. The sun was blazing and the departing troops were at the city gates. The young man in the lead was riding an imposing horse and had a lazy smile on his face, but his eyes were so cold that one did not dare to look at him. Master, everything is ready. Tai Yi said. Xie Jingxing took a look behind him. Once out of this city gates, the future path would be completely different. It also meant that he had made a clean break with the past and would no longer be involved. Eventually he would have to leave. There is nothing worth to be nostalgic about here. The white-clad male at the side waved his fan and said, It has nothing to do with you. Perhaps everyone is hoping that third older brother would not return. The pine green-robed gentleman smiled and looked to the front. No matter what, one will finally return home. Not necessarily. Both of them looked towards that purple-clad male. Xie Jingxing lowered his head and his gaze landed on his wrist. There was a red rope tied there and the end of the red rope was neatly and carefully knotted, as if it would not loosen no matter what. Isn't this something that females wear? Ji Yushu asked, Why are you wearing this for? After drinking someone's farewell wine, one owes someone a wish. Xie Jingxing said, One will return it after returning. He retracted his gaze and raised his whip. Rise. Set off. After Pei Lang left, a palace maid came out from the back to pour tea for her and said softly, Your ladyship, will the imperial tutor really take the Empress' fingertips' blood? The imperial tutor and the Empress seemed to be not bad. In terms of friendship, Pei Lang had known Shen Miao for a longer time than Mei Furen. Chapter 994. The imperial tutor is an intelligent person. Mei Furen picked up the tea and took a sip before smiling. Otherwise, when the princess was engaged, he would not have stood by and watched. Moreover, he has hidden thoughts in his heart. He is such a bright wind and bright moon, and is so rational that he does not allow himself to make any mistakes. Naturally, one must cut the weeds and remove the roots. I am helping him and it is too late for him to accept it. The palace maid nodded her head as if she understood and said, But what that monk said, to be able to borrow the Empress's fate to your ladyship, is that true? No matter if it is true or not, the position of the mistress of the 6 palaces is set for me. A trace of ruthlessness flashed in Mei Furen's eyes. It is only a fingertip's blood. Give her luck to me, and when my imperial son stabilizes the Ming cheese country, I will be merciful and burn paper money for the 3 of them. The palace maid nodded her head and did not dare to speak. Shen Miao's illness was somewhat serious. Fu Ming had just come to see her and accompanied her to chat for a while. Shen Miao wanted to find someone to ask about the recent situation in the Shen residence, and just as she left the courtyard, she saw Pei Lang. Pei Lang greeted her, but Shen Miao was very cold. On the matter of Wan Yu's marriage, Pei Lang's cold attitude made one's heart turn cold. In any case, their friendship had been going on for so many years, and Wan Yu had once called him teacher. And the disgust towards Fu Xiaoyi had naturally shifted to the disgust towards Pei Lang, and she did not even want to take another look at Pei Lang. Heard that the Empress has fallen ill. Pei Lang handed over a box. This. Perhaps it would be good for your ladyship's cough. Shen Miao swept a glance at him and opened the box. It was a stalk of medicinal herb that looked inexplicably familiar. When Shen Miao took it out to take a look, her fingertips suddenly felt pain, and when she looked again, it was pricked by the thorns on the herb. Beads of blood flowed down her fingertips. Bai Lu exclaimed and wanted to bandage it for her. But Pei Lang stared fixedly at her fingertips and said somewhat woodenly, "This is red sleeve grass, useful for coughing." Shen Miao smiled instead. She threw the herb into the box and closed the box before returning it back to Pei Lang and said coldly, "No need. Ben Gong once had a stalk of this herb, but it withered at the end. Moreover, the stalk of herb that Ben Gong raised did not have thorns on it." Her words had other meaning. If one do not want to give gifts, then do not give. Not to give. Not to give. Her words had other meaning. If one do not want to give gifts, then do not give. Please take it back. With that, he turned around and left without looking at Pei Lang again. Pei Lang held the box tightly in his hands and stared at Shen Miao's back with a complicated gaze. "You. Ling Tutu. Ming, Shen, Miao, Doctor." Pei Lang looked at the box. People always had to make some choices. The higher one was, the 1-1, the higher one 1-1 not. The higher one sit, the higher. The position. The higher the position, the one had one not. The higher one sat, the more helpless he was. He was helpless and had no other way. The pros and cons were clearly placed together. Which side of the tree would be chopped down and which side of the tree would monopolize the land? The ending was clear at a glance. He still had his own loved ones and he wanted to protect them. So any friendship or secret thoughts could be put aside. What Mei Furen wanted to do with the blood from her fingertips was not a good thing. He was helping the tyrant to do evil and adding insult to injury. He turned his head and walked in another direction. People of different paths could not make plans together. He could not do anything. He could only watch with folded arms. He could only watch the tree that he had worked hard to grow in the palace fall into the mud. That big fire burned for 3 days and 3 nights. Chapter 995. In the entire imperial palace, only the cold palace was burnt to ashes. The sorrowful mood, the tearful accusation, the curses before death and the deep despair all disappeared with the fire, leaving behind only the ghastly embers and the rumors that people talked about. Ming Qi's Empress Shen died. After the Shen family was executed for treason, the crown prince was deposed and committed suicide. Mei Furen was appointed as the new crown prince and Fu Xing became the new empress. The lonely cold palace suddenly caught fire in the night and burned the deposed Empress Shen to ashes. This was a matter that made one sigh. The Emperor of Ming Qi was benevolent and did not let the Empress go to the netherworld because of the Shen family's disloyalty. He spared her life and only banished her to the cold palace, but this female had no fortune and died in the fire. History was written by the victors, and it was the same for the inner palace. With a change of dynasty, the traces of Empress Shen's life were completely covered up. She did not have any belongings left as they were all destroyed in the fire. There was no one left in the first household of the Shen family, and it was really the end of the family dying out. That new crown prince's Empress Li changed from her previous gentle and charming temperament and became somewhat fierce. She wholeheartedly supported her own brother and coaxed Fu Xiaoyi until he was docile and the court was actually controlled by her. There was some meaning of the relatives monopolizing power. There were also some officials who faintly felt that something was wrong and wanted to secretly remind the emperor, but before they could take action, because of some inexplicable reasons, they were either demoted or exiled. Pei Lang looked at everything with cold eyes, but his heart was somewhat tired. In less than half a year after Shen Miao's death, Ming Qi almost turned the heaven and earth upside down. He indeed did not see wrongly. Mei Furan and her siblings had great skills, and it was difficult to say if the Ming Qi's country would fall into Mei Furan's hands in the future. He was loyal to Fu Xiaoyi and should have reminded Fu Xiaoyi, but after reminding a few times to no avail, he no longer reminded and even secretly felt that he deserved it. A person's heart was the easiest to change. A wise ruler could become an incapable ruler, and a loyal official could have disloyalty. Every night when Pei Lang was sleeping, he would be awakened by a pair of eyes in his dreams. That pair of eyes were black and white and there were no tears, but it made one's heart heavier than tears. Those were Shen Miao's eyes. Pei Lang used to think that what he did was right. He followed the trend of the times, seeking benefits and avoiding harm. This was his instinct, and it was also the best choice. But the longer time passed, the more he couldn't deceive himself. How was this the general trend? He obviously did not want Shen Miao to die like this. When did he start to have other feelings for Shen Miao? Pei Lang himself did not know. He was her teacher in Guangwen. He watched as Shen Miao, an arrogant and pampered girl who did not know anything, insisted on marrying Fu Xiaoyi. He watched as she entered the residence of Prince Ding and learned things that Fu Xiaoyi did not like, becoming a Wangfei, Empress, and finally a deposed Empress. She was actually a little stupid, but not very smart. She was a slow learner, but she had a kind of terrifying stubbornness. In the harem, she had some unnecessary kindness. Sometimes Pei Lang felt that Shen Miao was ridiculous to be willing to pay for a person, but at other times he felt envious of Fu Xiaoyi. Later on, he couldn't help but pay more attention to her. Even he himself did not realize that he had to be extra patient in teaching Shen Miao's problems. But Pei Lang was an intelligent person, and intelligent people would not allow themselves to make mistakes. Thus when he realized that he was having strange thoughts, he was determined to stop this mistake. So when Shen Miao went to the Qin country to be a hostage, it was him who suggested it. But 5 years later, Shen Miao returned and his thoughts still did not change. Chapter 996. He coldly watched as Shen Miao fought with Mei Furan in the inner palace until she was covered in injuries. He watched as her eyes dimmed and her haggard expression. Finally, when Fu Xiaoyi asked him how to deal with the Shen family descendant, he said these words without thinking. Cut the weeds and remove the roots. Cut the weeds in his heart and remove the roots in his heart. But he did not expect that Fu Xiaoyi would cut the weeds and remove the roots and even remove Fu Ming. Even a vicious tiger would not eat its cubs, but Fu Xiaoyi could even lay his hands on his own flesh and blood. You could still use the excuse that it was an accident on the road, but Fu Ming could only use Fu Xiaoyi's orders. Pei Lang remembered Shen Miao's eyes when she heard of Fu Ming's death. That pair of black and white eyes were wide open and there were no tears, but it was so miserable that one could not bear to look at it. That big fire burned for 3 days and 3 nights, but it burned Pei Lang's heart of regret. He went to find the abbot of Pu Tua Monastery and asked how to remove the hindrance in one's heart. The abbot was an old monk and looked at him and shook his head. Heart disease needs medicine to cure. Was there any medicine for regret in this world? Pei Lang sought the eminent monk's guidance and the monk said, "The reason why benefactor frequently dreams of old friends is because you owe them. She could not dissipate in your dreams because there is resentment that has not been resolved. Unable to reincarnate and unable to obtain liberation." Pei Lang panicked and asked if there was a solution. The monk asked in reply, to set the past mistakes right and seek for a chance to start again. If benefactor's life is needed, is benefactor willing? Pei Lang said, willing. That monk said, benefactor should return. Why must one return? Pei Lang was puzzled. Benefactor is willing to pay with one's life, but one need to wait for that opportunity. That opportunity. What opportunity does it refer to? Pei Lang asked. Benefactor still owes people and has an unfulfilled wish. When the old friend's wish is fulfilled, benefactor will sacrifice his own life and perhaps there would be a chance of survival. The monk said an Amitabha and said, "This is all that is said." This poor monk is unable to say more. Pei Lang thanked the monk and returned to the palace. What was Shen Miao's unfulfilled wish? Shen Miao's entire life was miserable and lonely. Most likely she wanted to see the enemy go to hell and the Shen family regain their innocence. There was a chance to start again, but one must wait. Wait or not? Wait. Pei Lang made his decision. This life was so long that he was willing to use this life to make up for a mistake. Winter passed and spring came. Wild geese came and went. When a dynasty's fate was nearing its end, the aura of decline would envelop it. Ming Qi was no longer the Ming Qi of the past. Exorbitant taxes and corvée labor, the common people had no way to make a living, corrupt officials colluded with each other, the court was in chaos, and the emperor was fatuous. The crown prince, on the other hand, was busy forming cliques all day long, wishing that he could ascend the throne as soon as possible. Taking back the military power but without a good general to drive them, Ming Qi was a piece of fat meat that everyone wanted to take a bite of. The faraway Great Liang attacked and annexed the Qin country and finally launched an attack on Ming Qi. Like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, victory came too easily as they fought all the way to the gates of the Ding capital. After setting up camp, everyone in the Ding capital felt insecure and the common people's doors were tightly shut as the atmosphere of the country's demise filled the air. In that big tent, someone was sitting and polishing a long sword. Ming Qi's fate has come to an end. Chapter 998. Xie Jingxing. Fu Xiaoyi gritted his teeth. The heir of the residence of the Marquis of Linan, the son of Xie Ding, the brother of Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao. No one would have thought that the youth who had died in the battlefield, the youth who had declined along with the residents of the Marquis of Linan, would reappear in front of the world with this appearance after so many years. He was the blood brother of the great Liang's Emperor Yonglu, the noble Prince Rui, and was also the great Liang's young marshal, commanding the Mou army which caused people to tremble with fear. Long time no see, son of the Fu family. Xie Jingxing greeted him. Everyone knew that the great Liang's Emperor Yong Li's younger brother was the most glorious and fought for him under the heavens, and was the most upright and forthright. Such a heroic character was originally the heir of the residence of the Marquis of Lin, and Mei Furen stared at that man. She was extremely afraid that no matter how confident she was in victory, she would lose her sense of propriety when it came to a matter of life and death. However, she had always relied on men to get what she wanted step by step. At this juncture, all her tricks were useless. She blamed Fu Xiaoyi for not having the ability and for the dynasty to be destroyed. Looking at the handsome man below the city walls, he had a natural air of nobility and could not help but stare at him. Her eyes were full of emotions. Xie Jingxing frowned and asked Ji Yushu, "Shen Miao lost to this woman?" Ji Yushu said, "Correct." She then added, looking at the average appearance, "One really do not know if the Ming-Chi Emperor's eyes grew crooked." Both of their voices were not concealed and the great Liang army roared with laughter and Mei Furan's face flushed red with hatred. Fu Xiaoyi was also angry in his heart as he looked at Xie Jingxing and said in a deep voice, "If you want to kill then kill. Why the need to talk nonsense? Still pretending to be a man until now." Ji Yushu said in disdain, "Third older brother, this Ming-Chi Emperor is anxious to die." Xie Jingxing smiled lazily and said, "This prince originally did not want to kill you and was too lazy to do it personally. But I owe your little empress a wish. Coincidentally, this ending is also the ending that you prepared for me many years ago. So, whether it is public or private, I have to return it to you." He opened his hand, and Gao Yang handed over the longbow and the silver arrow. Xie Jingxing placed his hand on the bow and arrow and heard a xiao sound. Mei Furan, who was on the tower, was hit by an arrow. However, the arrow was not aimed at his chest. It just so happened to avoid the vital parts. Blood flowed out incessantly. It was a ghastly sight. Mei Furan was in so much pain that she almost fainted, and Fu Xiaoyi's calm expression also changed twice. The scariest thing in the world was not death, but waiting for it. Xie Jingxing smiled gently and spread his hands again. Gao Yang sent another 2 silver arrows. He knocked 2 arrows on the longbow and whistled. The tens of thousands of troops of the Great Liang pulled their bows and aimed at the 2 of them. The flags on the platform fluttered in the wind, sounding like the wailing of ghosts. When the last of the black clouds dispersed, the golden sun covered the entire land, scorching the earth. The man's purple robe fluttered slightly in the wind. His smile was cold, but there seemed to be the mischievousness of a young man between his brows. He stood at the bottom of the city gate tower and looked at the 2 people who had panic in their eyes. He laughed heartily. "I'm sorry, little emperor. I'm indebted to a lady who entrusted me to take your dog life. Release." Tens of thousands of arrows ferociously shot towards the 2 people on the tower. It was like a ferocious beast coming out of its cage, almost covering the sky and earth. Not even a trace of the golden sun could be revealed as it swallowed the 2 of them. One could not see anything at all. In the imperial palace, that green-clad male had already fallen asleep in front of the table. Beside his feet, a lantern tilted, and the candle inside fell down. In less than a moment, the cloth curtains were set ablaze. The fire slowly spread, burning through the Zhonghua Palace, burning through the throne room, until the entire palace was enveloped in raging flames, turning everything red. "Third older brother, the imperial palace is on fire." Ji Yushu looked into the distance and said in shock, "Send people to put out the fire." "No need." Xie Jingxing stopped him. "This Ming-Chi imperial palace is not clean. It would be good to burn it." He raised his brows, white sun flames. "I did not miss the appointment. What is the meaning of that?" Ji Yushu did not understand. Xie Jingxing looked at the corner of the sky that was dyed red by the fire. In his eyes, there was a figure drinking alone in the bright moonlight. "This imperial court has let you down, so this prince will help you to overthrow this imperial court." He said softly, "This is most likely your wish." But he did not notice that the red rope that was firmly tied around his wrist and did not fall off for a few years suddenly broke and fell into the fire on the ground, turning into ashes. No one heard the long sigh of the female in the ashes. So this was a calamity. So this was fate. What one's eyes saw might not be true. What one's ears heard might not be true. In 2 lifetimes, he stood at the distant peak and smiled carelessly. One would only understand what kind of person he was when one was in front of him. He was cynical but the most sincere. He was full of schemes but he was loyal. He could command 1,000 troops with a cup of warm wine and could also drive a horse to the top of a building for a stranger he met by chance. He would say sorry to the emperor child that he was entrusted by a young lady to take his dog life. He lived the heaviest and most unrestrained life, the darkest and most realistic life. Born from despicableness was infinite sincerity, looking disdainfully at the world, coldly competing, and finally unhurriedly holding the chess piece in his sleeves, grasping that little bit of light in his palm. This was her question. Her question, but only he could answer it. It is raining. Gao Yang kept his fan. Summer is really strange. Xie Jingxing smiled. Enter the city. For what? To overthrow the imperial power. Chapter 999. Shen Miao had a very long dream. That dream seemed to be very, very long as a lifetime. She watched as a bystander watched herself from a babbling baby to a bouncing young girl, from a bouncing young girl to a slender young lady, then to a young married woman, then to the unattainable ruler of the 6 palaces in the palace, and finally to the deposed empress in the cold palace, turning into ashes in the raging fire. She watched herself fall in love with Fu Xiu-yi, and begged Shen Exan to marry her to Fu Xiu-yi. She sat at the side, desperately trying to stop her foolish actions, but it was futile. No one could hear her words, so she could only watch everything happen again. From a bystander's point of view, how foolish was the things that she did in the past. Shen Miao finally understood now. The most terrifying thing was to once again experience the heart-wrenching pain of the past. Her teenage years ended after she married Fu Xiu-yi. Those carefree days, even if she was called stupid by others, were at the end free and happy. And when she became Ding Wangfei, she was forced to be involved in these intrigues. Even her pair of children could not escape. The people around her left one by one, and the first household of the Shen family gradually declined. The once flourishing flowers were like flowers that bloomed to the extreme in spring, but once spring passed, summer came, and when the autumn wind blew, it would wither, making it look cold and shabby. In that dark life where there was almost no light, there were some things that she had overlooked. Those things were like the stars in the dark night, covered by other things and became unreal. Accidentally discovered, bright as before. Also like the embers of fireworks that accidentally broke into one's own courtyard, with a little bright color, making that dry and cold night become fragrant. She saw Xie Jingxing. Not that stubborn youth, not that hero that died on the battlefield. He was as arrogant as he was in the future, riding a tall horse, carrying a longbow, and in the midst of talking and laughing, he overturned an imperial court. He drank the farewell wine that she gave him under the bright moonlight, and on the dark day when the city was breached, he gave her a wish that she could not fulfill in her entire life. They had seen a fireworks show in the daytime, even if they hadn't broken the promise of that New Year's Eve. They were clearly strangers who met by chance, but he had become the most indispensable person in her life. Because of him, her wish was fulfilled, and because of him, she was reborn. It was just that the fate of that life was too short. Such a beautiful and anticipated fate was forced to stop because of the teasing of fate. What a pity. That was why there was a chance in this life. That short-lived fate was able to continue. All the unspoken questions seemed to no longer need to be spoken. Many things disappeared at that moment, including the questions and the answers. The karma of the past determines the outcome of the future. Shen Miao slowly opened her eyes. As far as the eye could see, it was the clear sky after the rain. An exquisite sachet was hanging in the corner of the mosquito net, probably to dilute the bitter smell of medicine. The fragrance and the smell of the herbs mixed together, creating a thought-provoking smell. Shen Miao looked up to her side. The young man leaned over the headboard, one hand still holding her hand tightly. His eyes were closed and there was a green stubble on his chin. It was not that obvious, but it was different from his usual pampered appearance. The joints of his hand were distinct, slender and warm, just enough to completely cover her hand. Shen Miao only moved slightly and Xie Jingxing woke up. Seeing that her eyes were open, Xie Jingxing was surprised for a moment, as if he had not reacted. After a pause, he suddenly said, "You are awake." Chapter 1000. Shen Miao nodded her head. "Do you feel anything wrong?" Xie Jingxing inquired. "Let Gao Yang come in for a look." He usually had a lazy and indifferent look, as if he did not care about anything, but at this moment there was a rare look of anxiety. Shen Miao said, "No need. I am very good." She then asked, "How is teacher Pei?" Xie Jingxing's face suddenly turned black. Shen Miao saw his face change and was stunned for a moment before understanding. She did not know how to explain. Was Pei Lang hateful? Naturally he was hateful. In the past lifetime he took her blood from her fingertips and gave it to Mei Furen. Even though she did not know if Mei Furen's changing one's fate was real or not, there were some thoughts of helping the evildoer, and that sentence of cutting the weeds and removing the roots indirectly led to Fu Ming's ending. Shen Miao's feelings towards Pei Lang were very complicated. She could ignore it for herself, but as it concerned Fu Ming, she was unable to forgive Pei Lang. But Pei Lang finally used his life to exchange for a chance for her to start over. It was unclear what kind of feeling it was. One was unable to be purely grateful or purely hate a person, so one could only draw a line in the relationship. Shen Miao did not want to be involved with Pei Lang in the relationship of owing and being owed. The matters of the past lifetime were already in the previous lifetime, but in this lifetime she did not want to owe Pei Lang anything, and also did not want to be owed by Pei Lang. She remembered very clearly that when that childlike assassin pounced over, it was Pei Lang who blocked the heaviest blow for her. If Pei Lang died because of her, then the involvement of these two lifetimes would not be clean. But looking at Xie Jingxing's expression, Shen Miao knew that he had misunderstood. When Xie Jingxing got angry because of these matters, Shen Miao inexplicably felt that he was like the little wolf dog that Luo Sui raised in the Luo family's army. She hurriedly stroked the little wolfhound's fur and said, "He saved my life, so he's my benefactor. He's not related to me, but he risked his life to save me. I can't just accept this kindness." Xie Jingxing's expression then eased up a little and said, "Gao Yang had taken a look. He woke up once last night and was really lucky." He then glanced at Shen Miao. "Why aren't you waking up? If you don't wake up, I'm going to chop off that Taoist priest's head." "Priest?" Shen Miao was startled. "Are you talking about Priest Qi Yan?" "What Taoist priest?" Xie Jingxing said in disdain, "He is just a Jianghu swindler who earns money." The so-called Taoist priest Scarlet Flame left Prince Rui's residence early in the morning. Before leaving, he took the good antique vase in the hall, saying that it was a thank-you gift. She did not know what kind of expert a Taoist priest who was always calculating money was. When Shen Miao heard Xie Jingxing say that the Taoist priest took a vase and left, she had some doubts in her heart. That long dream had solved a lot of her doubts. In fact, it was not necessarily true, but Shen Miao did not know why, but she felt that everything that happened in the dream was the complete story of her previous lifetime. That Taoist priest was indeed someone that she met on the way back to Ming Chi from the Qin country. She thought that he was a refugee who escaped from the famine and disguised himself as a Taoist priest to earn a living. She was after all Shen Xian's daughter and was somewhat generous in her heart. She gave the other a bowl of water but did not think that it would implicate so many things. If she really listened to that Taoist priest in her previous lifetime and did not step on the road back to the Ding capital, most likely there would not be those tragedies later on. But if she were to do it all over again, even though she knew that it was a road of no return, she would not have any other choice because her pair of children were in the palace. But that Taoist priest at the end completed a portion of fate. He also had things that he was afraid of, people that he was afraid of losing, and weaknesses. And these three things happened to be the same, which was this person in front of him. Let me make amends. Shen Miao said, isn't your birthday already passed a long time ago? How about taking today as making up for it? Making a posture to leave, Shen Miao anxiously shouted at him, Xie Jingxing. His footsteps paused and when he turned his head back, he had a mischievous look on his face. Shen Miao knew that she was fooled and felt regret in her heart, but she saw Xie Jingxing laughing out loud and suddenly walked forward to carry her up. Shen Miao subconsciously hooked her arms around his neck. Chapter 1003. Xie Jingxing carried her out just like that, causing the servants in the residence of Prince Rui to look at both of them. In Shen Miao's previous and current life, she had never been so close to a male. No matter if it was in the residence of Prince Ding or the inner palace, she had to put on the airs of an empress. But even Mei Furen did not seem to be carried by Fu Xiu-yi in front of so many people. If that was really the case, then the title of a fatuous ruler and femme fatale would not be able to escape. Could it be that she was a dignified and virtuous empress in her previous life, and in this life she had to bear the title of femme fatale? Xie Jingxing was rather like a fatuous ruler. Shen Miao's imagination ran wild as her eyes swept across those servants who were covering their mouths and sniggering. She was annoyed in her heart and pinched Xie Jingxing. What are you doing? Quickly put me down. TSK, no to be shy. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows and his tone was so bad that it made one want to beat him up. He said, just now one do not know who was the one who insulted my innocence in broad daylight. Even words like insulting innocence were used. Shen Miao could only try hard to calm her emotions. But she saw Luo Tan walking over. Most likely Luo Tan did not think that she would encounter such a scene. Even though she usually had a big heart, she was after all a young female and felt somewhat uncomfortable. Shen Miao let Xie Jingxing put her down and Luo Tan did not know where to place her eyes. Shen Miao asked her, it has been hard on you these days. Not at all. Not at all. Luo Tan waved her hands repeatedly and was a little afraid when she saw Xie Jingxing at the side. At that time she wholeheartedly wanted to vent Shen Miao's anger and threw a fit at Xie Jingxing, but later on she regretted it. The other party had a high position and was even the great Liang's Prince Rui. If he were to vent his anger on Shen Miao, then her sin would be big. But seeing Shen Miao and Xie Jingxing being so intimate, it seemed that there was no quarrel and her heart could not help but feel gratified. Oh, right. Luo Tan suddenly thought of something and took something out from her sleeves and placed it in Shen Miao's hands. This is what Taoist priest Qi Yan gave to me before he left and let me pass it to you, saying that it is for your parting room. It was a small wooden box with a chicken and a snake carved on it. Luo Tan said, one do not know why there is a chicken and a snake. Shen Miao. She said, this is a dragon and phoenix. Priest Qi Yan's carving skills were really not flattering. If Shen Miao did not understand, one would not be able to tell that it was a dragon and a phoenix. Luo Tan choked as Shen Miao opened the wooden box and took out 2 red ropes from it. This. Luo Tan said, these are just 2 red ropes, what's so special about it? You still said it was strange and strange, I thought it was something valuable. This Taoist priest is really stingy. He clearly has a whole valley of medicinal herbs, but he wants to give this. Shen Miao stared at the rope and her eyes wavered. In her past life, she had obtained a rope from a Taoist priest. That rope had accompanied her for many years. Later on, it passed through many hands and fell into the hands of Xie Jingxing. Her fragrant soul had once rested in the red string, and it was also the medium that connected her and Xie Jingxing's fate in her previous life. Suddenly, he felt that the red string was somewhat familiar. She stretched out her hands and tied the red string on her hands. Luo Tan looked at her actions and said in shock, You. Biao youngest sister, you are not going to wear this. Shen Miao looked at the red string on her hands with satisfaction and picked up another one before saying to Xie Jingxing, Stretch out your hand. Xie Jingxing said, I do not wear. Stretch out your hand. Shen Miao repeated. Xie Jingxing looked at her incredulously, I am a male. This can ensure safety. Shen Miao casually made up, You wear this with me. If you are in danger, I will know, and if I am in danger, you will also be able to feel it. Empress Xianda smiled gently. The Lu family had suffered a loss and wanted to test His Majesty's attitude, so naturally they would start from Consort Jing. Did not Lu Furen enter the palace to see Consort Jing a few days ago? His Majesty seemed to no longer have patience with Consort Jing. Tao Gugu said, Consort Jing has been restraining herself a lot with you these few days. If His Majesty really take action against the Lu family, on Consort Jing's end, what do you think? Leave it all to His Majesty to decide. Empress Xianda said lightly, whether it is sincere or fake, in Ben Gong's eyes, one would not be able to see these clearly. Since I entered the palace in the beginning, I know these truths. She looked at Tao Gugu who had a face full of worry and smiled instead, you wouldn't think that Ben Gong would care about these things. Tao Gugu didn't speak. Empress Xianda looked outside again and said, Ever since Ben Gong became the Empress, Ben Gong did not think of herself as a woman. The wife of an emperor is not a wife, but someone who will shoulder the world with him. Fortune and disaster depend on each other, life and death together. Ben Gong has never been afraid. Ben Gong is just slightly regretful. She looked at her stomach. Ben Gong was not able to give birth to my own child. In the past, if it wasn't for Consort Jing. Tao Gugu gritted her teeth, her tone filled with anger and unwillingness, and also the pain of not being resolved. Never mind, Empress Xianda tiredly waved her hand. She smiled, but that smile was somewhat numb and desolate. It's the same without Consort Jing. This child, Ben Gong, will not be able to give birth. She said softly, Look at the Hogong, who gave birth to his child. None. It's impossible. So even though Ben Gong is regretful, all the women in the Hogong are regretful. Ben Gong's regret is not regret. At least, Ben Gong still has this position that cannot be shaken, she said. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.